I know it's 6 o'clock, but Mr. Green got stuck in traffic that everybody else saw. It's not trace traffic. Big wreck on 65. Before he gets here, I do want to make an announcement. Most of y'all know Robert Yeager, city treasurer. He had a light surgical process earlier last week, and it became complicated. Now he's in grand, and with about a 50-50 chance of surviving. So y'all would keep him in prayers. His family and all of us. It's sick of Hoover. I don't know, you want to get anything out of the way while we're waiting on Mr. Green? Never asked again. All right. He's parking at the library. He should be walking in any time. I guess we do have a quorum. We can come back to reports, I guess. We want to go ahead and get some of the housekeeping issues out of the way. With that, we'll call the June 5th meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll. Okay.
Mr. Wyatt?
Here.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Here.
Mr. Murphy?
Here.
Mr. Posey?
Here.
Mr. Shaw?
Here.
Mr. Stick?
Here. If Ms. Hanley would handle the invitation and Mr. Posey would pledge allegiance.
Let us pray. Lord, let us remember today the many blessings that we have in our lives, our family, our friends, and the privileges we enjoy as Americans. We are grateful to the many who have given so much that we may enjoy the freedom we have in this country. Let us remember all those today that are in need of prayer, especially Councilman Smith and his family on the loss of his father. May they find peace and strength in knowing that he is in your loving care. And we pray also for the healing of Robert Yeager. May you hold him in the palm of your hands. In your name we pray. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, everyone should have received a copy of the May 11th work session and the May 15th regular meeting on there. So I take a motion.
Mr. President, I move for approval without reading.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed nay. The ayes have it. We'll come back to reports after Mr. Green arrives. Item 6, resolution 5590-17, Mr. Forney.
This resolution approves an amended budget for fiscal year ending September 30, 2017.
Mr. President, I move for approval of resolution 5590-17.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any questions from the council? Some of this, I guess, Dr. Lopez, are you here? Oh, hi. I know we've got some sewer money in here. That's going to be paid out of the sewer fund account. And you might do just a quick overview of the other items. Where the money's going to be coming from the fund, though.
Mr. President, may I also make a quick comment? John Anderson is stuck in traffic as well, and he's watching online, so he asked if we could each speak clearly into the microphone so he could hear.
Okay.
I read his mind.
Okay, yes, as you mentioned, there are 3 items on this budget amendment. The first one is dealing with sewer pump replacement for $85,000. And those funds, that's being funded out of the sewer enterprise fund. The second item deals with just a reallocation in the capital projects fund to provide some additional funding for the Star Lake improvements. And we're reallocating funds from another project that was not needed. And then the third item is no money in this budget amendment, but it does go ahead and deletes 1 full-time equipment operator senior and adds 2 full-time crew workers. And on an annual basis, the net to the city, net cost to the city would be $7,300, salaries and benefits.
Could you let us know which project was being eliminated from Star Lake?
It wasn't being eliminated, we just took some excess funds, and that was from the 911 dispatch phone project, and there were some extra funds in that project that were not needed.
Okay. Any questions from the council? Any from the audience? With that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item number 7, resolution 5591-17, Mr. Corley.
This resolution authorizes the mayor to execute an agreement with the International Association of Chiefs of Police, Inc., to develop a police sergeant promotional written examination.
President, I move for approval of resolution 5591-17.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any comments from the council? Officer in the back, can you explain this to us?
You got me, sir.
Maybe, is the XO here?
I am right.
Sorry, could you just maybe stand up and give us a quick synopsis, maybe about 10, 12 seconds?
Yes, sir, we've been using the International Association of Chiefs of Police for preparing that promotion exam for us. This is the 3rd round. We give them our association rules and regulations, and they tailor and custom the test to fit our standards.
Good. Mr. Green is here. Sorry, we felt we need to get started so we can get to the good stuff.
My apologies, some traffic on 31 this second.
Any questions from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item 8, authorize acceptance of public improvements within the road right-of-way. We've got 3 resolutions, and we will vote them together unless, how we feel that we need to do them separately.
We have to, we can read about it at the same time.
All right, well, let's do the 2 we can do together, and then we'll handle the third separately.
Okay?
Just, yeah, just, okay.
All right, resolution number 5592-17 approves acceptance of public improvements within the road right-of-way for Southampton Phase 3 and 4. And resolution number 5593-17 approves acceptance of public improvements within the road right-of-way for the Jackson Place subdivisions.
Mr. President, I move for approval of resolutions 5592-17 and 5593-17.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any conversation from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item number 9, resolution 5594-17, Mr. Corley. Wait a minute, I believe Mr. Rice wanted to say something before Mr. Corley got started.
Yeah, Mr. President, thank you. This time we just request that item number 9 be continued.
Okay, we have a request for a continuance, so I guess we don't need Mr. Corley. That'll save us about $7.25 a word. So, we've had a request for a continuance. Is this to a date certain?
No, sir.
Call the chair.
Call the chair.
All right. Looking for a motion.
Mr. President, I move for the continuance of resolution 5594-17 to call the chair.
Second.
We have a motion, second. Any conversation?
Can we just have a tad bit of conversation on this topic presented to the council on Thursday? Continuing on today.
Yes, sir. We think we may have an administrative resolution working with the school system that might not require council action, but it's gonna take a little time for those pieces to fall into place. So we just need a little bit more time to work those elements of the plan. It might be that we can, just remove it from consideration altogether, but we're not sure yet.
Well, that being said, there was a date that was given for the school system to begin to, I guess, move into the location, that's correct. How does that affect that?
Well, if we come back and we wanna, continue with the plan at the Blue Ridge Gym, they'll be able to, adjust their construction schedule accordingly. If we come back with an alternative plan, then they won't have that time constraint.
Mr. Rice, I'd inquired Thursday about how much the city had funded repairs in that gym for city use. Did you ever find when that occurred and how much?
Mr. Smith, it slipped my mind to request that until today, go figure. And I asked for that, but I did not ask for it in time for this meeting. It was not a fair request as late in the day as I made the request. That's on me. We'll definitely have that if we come back to pursue this plan.
All right. If it doesn't come back, then we'll just notify the council.
Sure, absolutely.
All right.
Mr. President, just one more comment for you.
Yes,
sir. And some discussion took place about this item out of the fact that I think it was utilized by our rec team very frequently. But there was some discussion some weeks prior with the school system and city administration that they needed that space for some of their needs. And I think they reached an agreement. Out of that, it was also some dialogue, and we can talk very briefly about the new sports complex meeting the needs not only of producing revenue for the city, but also ensuring that our organizations, basketball, the whole 9 yards, are able to have space at a reasonable price, because that was the original plan for that location.
Yes, sir. We met for about 2.5 hours this morning at the Finley, representatives from Park and Rec and SFM and myself, and that was the sole topic of discussion, is how we're gonna balance the needs. They're not competing interests, we just have to find a way to have parallel access so that we do generate sufficient revenue to make bond payments on that magnificent facility, but so that we also don't deprive the residents of Hoover of use of that facility. And there are some very good plans that have already been put in place. I think there's some room for some improvement. We got a lot of that dialogue on the table this morning. So we're gonna come back with a little bit more comprehensive work session on specifically that topic, to be sure. It's gonna have to be a balancing act. We can't have a situation where it's not ever rented out and completely available for community use. And we certainly can't have a situation where it's perpetually rented out and Hoover kids don't get to experience it. So everybody's committed to making sure that we achieve that balance.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
Dr. Murphy, since you're in the audience, do you mind speaking on this? Will this negatively affect your plans for the IT department and schools going forward?
Obviously, in an ideal world, you approve that this evening, and we're moving in ASAP, but we're certainly respectful if that's not the position that the city finds itself in at this time.
I just want to reiterate, we're in constant communication as recently as about 5:40 this afternoon with the schools to be sure that we find a solution. So we're not leaving the school system without an answer. We may be able to work something out between us that doesn't require this agreement to be amended.
Is there a time frame to that, you believe, that?
I think we'll know something one way or the other, so that if this needs to come back, I think on the next agenda, but I want to kind of leave ourselves a little wiggle room at the call of the chair. But I think if we need to come back to this, we'll know that by the 19th, so we'll be able to have it on the next agenda.
Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, item number 10, authorize the mayor to execute performance agreements for 2017 Freedom Fest.
Mr. President, we need to vote on the motion.
I'm sorry. Looking for a motion for continuance.
I believe we have a motion.
Yes, I did do that. All right, so all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item number 10, authorize the mayor to execute performance agreements for 2017 Freedom Fest, resolution 5595 and 5596-17. Mr. Corley.
Resolution 5595-17 authorizes the mayor to enter into a performance agreement with Line Boys of Alabama LLC and their management company, Monterey International Performance, City of Hoover's 2017 Freedom Fest.
President, I move for approval of resolutions 5595-17 and 5596-17.
We have a motion second. Any conversation, questions, or comments? Sorry? I'm just trying to hurry things on so we can get to the good stuff.
5596-17 authorizes the mayor to enter into a performance agreement with the Hillville Group for the City of Hoover's 2017 Freedom Fest.
Superstar. We learned all about superstars at the work session. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from the council? Any from the audience? I believe that this year we're really stepping up by obtaining the flag awards.
We really are. I think Ms. Caldwell has done a fantastic job of surveying the available talent that's within our price range, and she landed on this group. They're a highly acclaimed, decorated group, of course, from Alabama. If you've ever had an opportunity to hear them, it's really a magnificent experience. I think it's going to make a very special Freedom Fest.
Excellent. Hearing and seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item number 11 is a public hearing for a approval of terms and conditions of the development agreement with MJ Food LLC. Mr. Corley, say anything before we hold the public hearing?
No, that covers it, and then we'll have a resolution following the public hearing.
All right, is there anybody here to speak to the tax abatement request? This has also satisfied the needs of amendment number 772 here in the Constitution of Alabama. No? Anything from the council? No?
Just one quick statement,
Yes, sir.
Mr. President. Moving forward, will there be some discussion as we grow as a city? I'm sure more incentives will be asked by businesses. How will it be proceeded upon moving forward with those requests? Or should there be some form of template or discussion involved around in the future?
It's my anticipation that the Economic Committee should work up some policies and/or regulations that staff can go by, and to try to curtail businesses that are wanting to come into the city from having to wait too long that might interrupt their plans. But how we're gonna end this, obviously, we're gonna have a conversation with the mayor, city staff, as well as the committee, and probably the sooner the better. But right now, we're dealing with the issue before us. Did that help?
Yes, sir.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I just want to thank the boot and the ownership of the restaurant. If I could borrow a phrase from you, Mayor Mercado, the city of Hoover is open for business. And part of that, I think, is the city and this administration looking for opportunities to spur on, if you will, economic development and growth. And certainly one way that the Boots are doing that is taking a 3-year vacant building in the Grove Shopping Center that's, I would say, on the verge of dilapidation. And they're investing $1.2 million to bring that building back to life and to give the Grove area a shot in the arm. And these things have a way of trickling in a positive direction for the city. I believe it began with Chick-fil-A operating there. It'll help with the growth, with the Boot coming in. So this is a very small investment on behalf of the city as a way to help spur growth. And to Mr. Murphy's question, this one is based on new tax money, so it's not any money that we're not receiving today. So it's new revenue, and it's capped at a dollar amount, and certainly at a year perspective as well. So thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, so that for those, this is a 5-year agreement that ends in 2023, not to exceed $50,000. That's correct? Thank you.
All right, I think this satisfies the need of the 772 hearing. So with that, I will accept a motion.
Mr. President, I move for approval of Resolution 5597-17.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional comments from the council? Questions?
Just to confirm, Mr. President, this resolution authorizes the mayor to execute a development agreement with MJB LLC regarding the food restaurant located at 5532 Road Full Park.
Mayor's going to do a lot of negotiating. Anything else from the audience? Yes, sir. You need to come down and provide your name and address.
I was just going to ask which particular building it is.
It is, well, if you'll provide your name and address, we'll bring it right back to you.
Big Mosley, 3415 Heather Lane, Hoover.
All right?
And I was just wondering which vacant building.
This is
you
an
refer to.
abandoned bank building.
Okay, I know the one you're talking about.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. All right, sounds like a 6-1, unless Madam Clerk, you need a roll call. All right, good. Item number 12 is, motion to approve an ABC application for Ollie Danbury Lessee LLC, doing business as Danbury Inverness, 235 Inverness Center Drive. This is due to a change in ownership on previously approved site. Mr. Shaw.
President, I move to approve the ABC application for Danbury Lessee LLC.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any conversation from the council? Any from the audience? Is the applicant here tonight? All right, seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item 13 is motion to approve ABC application, restaurant retail liquor for Kobe Birmingham, DBA Kobe Japanese Steakhouse and Sushi Bar, 340 Empress Corners. This is due to a new business locating at a previously approved site. Mr. Shaw.
And Mr. President, I move to approve the ABC application for Kobe Birmingham Incorporated.
Second.
We have a motion second. Any comments or questions from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item 14 is the second reading of ordinance 172332. Mr. Porter.
This ordinance rezones the property located at 2313 Teton Road to E2 Single Family Estate District.
Shaw.
Mr. President, I move to adopt ordinance 17-2332.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the ordinance. Any questions or comments from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, if you call the roll.
Mr. Green? Mr. Minor?
Aye.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Shaw?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
I am remiss in not allowing Mr. Green to revert back to item number 5, I believe, committee reports, and he has a recommendation for a PCA appointment.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I move to make the following appointments to the Board of Zoning Adjustments effective June 8, 2017, to reappoint Mr. Paul Gamble to another 3-year term as a regular voting member, term to expire 6/7/2020, to appoint Mr. Jim Brush, currently serving as a supernumerary member, to replace Leanna Huddleston as a regular voting member, term to expire 6/7/2020, and to appoint Mr. David LeCompte to fill the unexpired term of Mr. Jim Brush as supernumerary, term to expire 5/31/2018.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from the council? It's really isn't something that would have public input, since it's just a voting of adding these individuals. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item number 15. City of Hoover is requesting rezone recently annexed property owned by Young Ping Huang and Yu Ying located 2829 Montague Drive from Jefferson County R1 to Hoover R1. Is the applicant here tonight? That I can say, I probably ruined it pretty good. Any comments or questions? Well, I guess we need a motion.
Yeah, Mr. President, I move that we adopt ordinance 17-2333.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the ordinance. Any comments or questions from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
Mr. Green?
Aye.
Mr. Lyda?
Aye.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Shaw?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye. Okay. Starting to get into the meat of things. Time y'all want pizza delivered, 7:30? 8? Item 16, Richard Johnson representing Black Ridge Partners LLC is requesting approval of the First Amendment to the Black Ridge PUD to remove 141 single-family residential units from the Black Ridge PUD and reallocate to the Trace Crossings PUD and to add approximately 7-acre parcel, more or less, known as the hand property, an approximately 24-acre parcel, more or less, known as Carmichael property, pre-zoned from Shelby County Agriculture to Hoover PR1 planned single-family district. If we have any conversation, we'll take a motion on the ordinance.
Yes, Mr. President, I move to adopt ordinance 17-2334.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Mr. Smith,
Yes, sir.
to clarify, ordinance 17-2334 approves the pre-zoning action to rezone the property currently known as the hand property, the Carmichael property, PR1 planned single-family district, prior to being annexed to the city of Hoover. The property is fully described and shown in Exhibit 8 of the ordinance. I understand that we're going to take a separate motion to approve the overall amendment to the Black Ridge PUD following the discussion on the second reading of the ordinance.
Belcher, you gonna stand in lieu of Mr. Johnson?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Johnson having heart problems?
Possible.
All right, Mr. Belcher.
Good evening, my name is Jonathan Belcher, representing Black Ridge Partners. Our address is 3545 Market Street, Hoover 35226. Our request is to incorporate approximately 31 acres of property into the Black Ridge PUD. The current PUD surrounds these parcels now, and they were located in unincorporated Shelby County. Our original plan was to include those when we first requested the Black Ridge PUD, but we did not acquire the property until this year. So that's why we are making this request today. It does not add any residential units to the Black Ridge PUD. It still stays the same, so it just increases the overall acreage of the PUD by 31 acres.
All right. We had some conversation earlier today. Is this the parcel that is going to see a reduction?
Yes, sir, this is part of the parcel that will be reduced.
Could you explain that, please?
So we're asking for the transfer of 141 of the approved units in Black Ridge PUD. There's currently 1,150 approved units now. This would reduce it to 1,009. The use of those units would be for the Wilburn Lake development that's within the Trace Crossings PUD.
Probably remiss, Mr. Lyda, have I asked for a motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. I just got so excited, I forgot.
And these two properties are adjacent to each other, Wilburn and Black Ridge.
So, based on what could have been built on this property, what are the number
Prior to the PUD, there was 3,382 units approved for the Black Ridge development, which we reduced to 1,150.
What about the Fleming property per se? Is there not a reduction there as well?
There is, but it's not part of this Black Ridge request.
All right. All right. Any questions or comments from the council? from the audience. Now, this is strictly for the Black Ridges, not Trace. Mr. Singer? Name and address, please.
Arnold Singer, 613 Riverhaven Place. It was a year ago that we had the Blackridge project come before the zoning board and the city council. I think it's important to understand where that particular project stands and what some of the requirements of that project are. What is the status of the two railroad bridges? How far along on construction or completion are they?
Singer, I don't know that is what's before us.
What's before us is a mixture of movement of units between projects. Certainly, we have to go back to Pocahontas, which was the basis of a lot of this stuff here. Pocahontas is not only the Blackridge PUD, but also includes Turtle Creek. Together, that's about a little over 2,500 acres, which would have produced well over 5,000 dwelling units. And one of the requirements in there is that for every 1,800 units, there would be a school property provided, 20 acres with roads and utilities provided. So my first question in that regard, as it applies to the transfer as being requested here, is what happens to the obligation, because I saw nothing in writing, the obligation to count toward the 1,800 units? Will that 141 units that are being transferred to the Lake Lilburn project, does that take away? I've seen nothing in writing on that. I would suggest that 10 years from now, when I'm not here anymore, a second-year law student would be able to successfully argue, if there's nothing in writing, then what do we have? So, that's one concern. But in reality, since this involves Blackridge, it involves Trace Crossing, and there are, most of the questions that have come up, most of the public comment, have been concerned with development along State and Trace Parkway. I believe that the council would do well to request that a simplified amendment to Trace Crossing be the next order of business that would deal with parcels 4, 6, and 10, and give the council a chance to vote yea or nay on that particular issue. Let it stand by itself, and that most of the rest of the items in here belong properly with a master plan. Because in Jonathan Belcher's posting on Facebook the other day, he spoke in terms of master plan. Appendix B of the Trace Crossings talks about the master development plan. That's the developer coming up with a master plan, which with the PUD ordinances, et cetera, is right. But I think it was a very important issue in this past election that we have a master plan. If we're gonna have all these thousands of acres being planned according to what the developer wants, then we as residents and citizens and businesses of Hoover have not had our chance for input.
I wouldn't say that. We've been receiving a lot of input, and tonight there's gonna be more. But if you would give Mr. Belcher just a moment, I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but let's let him get on record.
Thank you, Mr. Singer, and I appreciate you bringing that up, because there are a lot of moving parts, as he mentioned earlier tonight, between Trigger Creek property, the Black Ridge property, and it's our full intention to uphold the agreement that already exists with the Western Pocahontas annexation agreement, which means any of the units that are transferred from Trigger Creek or any of the units transferred from Black Ridge would still count towards the school requirement of one school for every 1,800 homes that are built. I certainly agree the accounting for that will be a little more complex than what it is prior to this proposal, but the shifting of the units wouldn't by any means change the requirements by that original agreement.
So the parcels that are shifted are still in the county.
Yes, sir. And as far as the bridge, I can just briefly answer it. We've had our final safety meeting with CSX and plan to start construction as soon as the weather will allow on the first bridge, which is at the end of our extension to Stadium Trace Parkway. And then we're just in early conversation on the second bridge and do not have a defined timeline for that yet.
Singer, does this help?
And I certainly appreciate, and you know, I've had very good relations with Jonathan and his wife. They are gentlemen. But the thing is, I would like to see it either in writing as an affidavit or as part of the ordinance/resolution that it applies to. I think it's important to have it in writing because memories do fade. Okay. Another point, it was stated that between 2001 and 2007, an average of 661 residential units were permitted. And then in the period from 2008 to current, we've had 291 per year. On that, okay? And in the documentation for the PUDs, signatures indicated that they're expecting 275 to 300 units per year is what the market will be able to absorb. When you, that's what all, that makes my point even more important. We have 1,500 units right now approved in Lake Wilbur. We have 1,150 units approved for Black Ridge. At 300 units per year, just that alone takes a number of years. I'll let you do the math. Again, I don't see the need to be rushing for these annexations and things of that nature. Let's go through the master plan process. Thank you.
Council, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, sir, aside from, and we're under construction in Black Ridge, and I don't know that I would understand waiting for a master planning process to delay the Black Ridge development. We've got a fully built lake and paved roads in there, waiting on the bridge to be constructed.
Any questions from the council?
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
In regard to the master plan, Mr. Belcher's talking about, could you please speak to how long it will take to get a master plan in that specific area?
That's a loaded question. So, let me ask this, do you want me to give my spiel now or under the next agenda item?
Yes, wherever you feel.
Wherever the spirit leads.
part deals with the expansion part. Black Ridge, we can't master plan because there's an existing PUD. It's already going, so I would say wait, if that's okay, Mr. Green?
To answer that question, I didn't want this presentation
Okay.
tonight. All I was asking was approximately how long are we talking about? 10 years?
Well, as
10
far
months?
as,
3?
as far as the, master plan that would cover comprehensively the city and a number of
No,
topics.
that's the specific area that we're talking about tonight.
Okay, the specific area that we're talking about tonight, it is my professional opinion that we are and have been going through the master planning process. The planned unit development, a critical component of that is the master development plan. And in my professional opinion, first of all, what is a plan? What is a master plan? What does it do for us? A couple of things. One is that Alabama State Code, section 1152.8, is the part that says that a city shall produce a master plan. Now, one thing I want to point out is that it does not say that it has to produce a comprehensive master plan at one time. That's key, because that opens the door for us to be able, and that same chapter actually states that the city may adopt a master plan in whole or in part. It can be a comprehensive master plan that covers the entire city, covers a broad range of topics, such as land use, transportation, parks and recreation, etc. But the city can also engage in master planning in part. And that part can be divided several ways. You can take it by topic, for instance. If you wanted to do a citywide land use plan first and then do other components such as transportation, housing, parks and recreation, you could do those at a later time. Or you can actually break it up by geographical area, which is key for our discussion tonight. The reason that we have the planned unit development instrument is because, number one, state law allows for us to break up our city into geographical areas and do master planning for that geographical area. Secondly, it is to provide a means for creating flexibility with our zoning. So we're not going in and spot zoning a piece of property and not zoning it without having gone through a planning process. And so the PUD does two things for us. One, it allows us to master plan for a portion of our city. And two, it allows for us the flexibility to zone that property, in particular by having gone through a planned, concerted effort to lay out the vision for that particular portion of your city. So that's the process that we have been going through, as I see it, coming in kind of at the 11th hour, but having to do a lot of reading, a lot of research, a lot of catching up as to what has happened heretofore. And even going back and watching all 2+ hours of our P&Z meeting on the subject, which that was very educational. But I hope that answers to some degree your question.
Well, it didn't, but thank you.
Well, is there anything more specific that I should be getting to?
I don't know how else to ask it than a timeline.
Well, the timeline for this particular portion is really up to you guys. We've gone through.
How soon could we don't have one that I've seen, a master plan that the city has built tonight. With this in play, I just wondered what it would take, and to get one together.
I understand.
That entire area.
Right. This is a master development plan that's gone through several iterations. In the beginning, you can trace it all the way back to the inception of Trace Crossings as an industrial park. That's initially what it was planned to be, an industrial park. And over time, you've had the Brock's Gap portion that was taken out, replanned, developed as residential. We're left now with the property in question along Stadium Trace that is currently zoned industrial, be it a restricted industrial or kind of an open-ended industrial. So what we are looking at, considering for final adoption tonight, is a master development plan that, one, takes a look at all that property along Stadium Trace and considers a new way of using it. A way of using it that, quite frankly, is a lot more imaginative and a lot less noxious than the uses that are permitted by right today. And I say permitted by right because the property owner of that property today has certain entitlements to use that property for certain uses that would be, in my estimation, much more noxious to the surrounding community than what is being proposed. So this master plan for the area has gone through several iterations as far as I can tell. It results in uses being proposed that are considerably less intense than the uses that the property owner is entitled to use the property for today. And it's not been without the city being involved. The city has been involved every step of the way. The developers held their own town hall meetings. We've had our own public meetings with the P&Z committee, and we've been back and forth with the developer to try to work on this master plan, get it to something that is a little more in keeping with certainly the mayor and I've heard from several council members' vision for creating spaces that are more unique, more village-like, more walkable than your traditional industrial or commercial developments. So there has been an influence on this master plan from its original inception all the way to date that the city has been very involved in, the public has had involvement in it, and there's been a lot of back and forth. This is not something that the developer has come to us and this is their first crack at it and it's a vote yes or no right now. We have gone through the planning process. There's been public input, there's been back and forth, and what has happened over time is you see a master plan that has been altered from its original state to where we find it today, which is greatly improved over its first inception. But the city's been very intimately involved in working with this process to make sure we get a better product than what we started out. And that's the planning process, trying to create a vision for tomorrow that's better than what's there today. Thank you.
Just to get us back on track on this particular item, I see three different issues. One is to remove 141 single-family units from Blackridge, to add an approximate 7-acre parcel to Blackridge, and approximately 24-acre parcel to Blackridge, requesting to be rezoned from Hoover agricultural, from Shelby County agricultural to Hoover PR1. So I think on this particular item, we probably should think about these particular issues themselves, because we'll certainly get to the others in short order.
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
If I could, Mac, I'm sorry to make you get up again, to expand on Councilman Green's question. To maybe help clarify that, how long would it take to have a master plan from Highway 150 down to Blackridge, including the whole area, not just what we're voting on tonight, but all of Stadium Trace, all of the Trace Crossings area?
I think what we are prepared to do at this time is we do want to take a look at the city comprehensively with our planning exercise. We have put out an RFP and received responses for a consultant to assist us in that comprehensive planning effort. And if there are some issues that extend beyond just Stadium Trace that we would like to address in this area, we, at least at this point in time, envision that being part of our comprehensive planning process, which as soon as we accept a proposal and enter into a contract with our consultant, I would gauge that to be about a 10-month process.
Okay.
Mr. President,
if I may,
Yes, sir.
Mac, maybe we need to kind of define, master planning here, because it's scattered all over the place. Because generally, you take a large look at the city, you separate it out into multiple, categories. You may say, okay, we have a certain allocated dollar amount this year to look at master planning for all of transportation. We may have an allocated dollar amount to look at all the trailways and greenways, transportation, school system. All those are, and also city center, all right, where your interstate intersect in. And from that point, in master planning, you have subcategories of residential areas that, how do they tie into all those patterns? What problematic issues they have currently right now, and how do we address those now? So I think we kind of possibly making master planning this small piece that this doesn't change, but master planning changes. We have to evaluate it every single year, especially when growth occurs. So I think each individual item has to be looked at on its own merit. I totally agree. We haven't had a full discussion about master planning for the city, so nobody knows where we're going in a sense. So it's hard to talk when you can't see something right in front of you, and you're concerned about your resident, you're concerned about your street, and you're concerned about your future living in the city of Hoover. So I totally understand that, but maybe I'm kind of answering your question.
In a way, to define master plan, I know that term is thrown around a good bit. I reflect back on what Alabama state law says, and it leaves master planning a little open in stating that your master plan for the development of your community can be comprehensive, meaning it can cover the entire municipality and your planning jurisdiction. It can cover a variety of components within it, topics, as I mentioned, such as land use, transportation, parks, recreation, etc. Or, state law says you can do a master plan in part, consisting of a specific geographical area or a specific topic. So that's the way state law lays it out. I don't know of a better way to define it than what our state code has. But it offers flexibility for the city to do both. I think they, in their infinite wisdom, who wrote and approved that, would find that there were times where a city was not comfortable going with the comprehensive route. And certainly when a city doesn't have the resources to do that, taking the elephant one bite at a time is a much better route to go. And I know that's where I found myself in my last station, that we were not prepared to do a comprehensive plan, but rather if we took an incremental approach, one that not only took it topic by topic, but also kept the planning process alive year after year. That particular formula worked well for us. For the city of Hoover, it's my understanding that we're gonna do a comprehensive plan. That's what people have requested. That's the direction the administration and what I heard from the council. That's where we're going. So we're certainly going to make our best effort to do a really good comprehensive plan.
Any other questions from council? Any from the audience dealing with these three items? You've already been up once. Okay. I'm sorry with you.
On December 613 Riverhaven Place, I feel like inside I'm channeling my friend Dan Fulton. So please give me a little bit of leeway as you gave him. To simplify my request that I made earlier, I think item 6 within item 17 is really the issue that's purely within the Trace Crossing PUD that should be addressed as a motion, go yea or nay. And then basically table the others so that we have a chance to take a look at exactly what Matt was bringing up. The segment concerning annexation. This is, we need some real clear public input with regard to annexation and the potentials. Sometimes adding 1 or 2 homes just opens up the floodgates, and we've seen those kinds of examples. We really are concerned about the future of our city. So if item 6 is covered, then the vote on the amendment, the 11th Amendment to Trace Crossing, would be subject to some revisions so that it just covered that as opposed to many of the other items. And so really what I'm saying is there should be a modified 11th Amendment and a soon-to-be looked at 12th Amendment, which would cover the areas that are being tabled now.
Talking about the annexation portion.
Primarily the annexation portion, because that's when it opens the floodgates.
Yes, sir. Don't sit down, we might want to talk about this. The property that is under consideration for annexation tonight can be built under Shelby County rules, which is going to allow more density than what Hoover would require. And thus, it would add more cars to the traffic issue. So one of the things that I'm considering is whether or not are we better off to annex it, control fewer door fronts so you have less traffic.
Well, first of all, I don't see that kind of a thing, even if it's approved, jumping ahead of the 1,500 units already approved for Wilburn. And if I remember correctly, on the Cahaba River side of the Lake Wilburn project, there was something like 93 units that have been approved. I think that have moved forward for construction. So, you know, to hear what almost sounds like, and my choice of words, I wish it were better. To say that, well, we could wind up with a 12-story hotel on Stadium Trace Parkway, or to say that we could have development on this piece of property that we're looking at for annexation, which would be more intense than what we allow. That's maybes, not realistic maybes. And so it almost sounds like a threat, but I know it's not meant as a threat. But it's something that makes us stop and say, but gee, I don't want that to happen. So there have been many years that these properties could have been developed, whether it was Shelby County or along Stadium Trace Parkway, they have not been developed.
We didn't have a roadway system.
Excuse me, we have a beautiful, I'm glad you brought that up. We have a beautiful, nicest roadway in all of Hoover is Stadium Trace Parkway. It's a beautiful boulevard. Now, the developer is extending that 4,400 feet to accommodate Lake Wilburn. It's being extended as a single lane road in each direction. If the traffic is heavier, it's going to be up to the city to pay for those kinds of things. But, you know, again, what parts do you take a look at? I can't put too much weight on what might develop in the next year on these properties at this time. Thank you.
President,
Yes,
can I ask
sir.
a question?
Yes,
Just
sir.
on, what our, okay. Right now, we don't have a master plan, is that correct? Mr. House, do we have a master plan today?
Depends on what level you're talking about.
As a city, do we have a comprehensive master plan?
To my knowledge, we do not have a comprehensive master plan for the city.
We're going to get a comprehensive master plan as soon as the RFP is approved.
That's correct.
Do we think any of this is gonna be built between now and how many months?
I'm looking at 10 months once we enter into a contract.
Do we think any of this is we're gonna break ground on this within 10 months?
Is that a question of me?
And I'm not necessarily talking about Black Ridge. I know you're working on Black Ridge now. I think what I'm talking about is what Arnold's talking about, this extension.
Well, we've invested more dollars than the city has in the Finley Center and those improvements there just on Wilburn and Black Ridge already to date. So yes, sir, I hope so. I hope that we'd be starting homes in the next 60 days.
Okay. So right now, we're faced with the issue to where we're not gonna have 10 months to do this, to wait for the master plan to come on. So we're saying that what we're doing now is looking at the plan in place, and like you said, taking the elephant one bite at a time.
What we're looking at tonight is a master development plan for trace crossings and alterations that are being proposed there. Now, can I answer the question if anything would be built in the next 10 months? I can't do that. What I could say is if the property owner had a buyer for a property that wanted to develop a use that is permitted in the industrial zone that's there, we could not tell them no if the zoning ordinance permitted it.
Councilman Posey, let me clarify. My answer is strictly referring to those homes that are in the Wilburn PUD and the Black Ridge PUD.
Not the new plan. I think that's where we're getting confused. Right now, we're talking about the issue at hand is dealing with Black Ridge. The next issue, which would be item 17, is where we get into talking about the new plan and new expansion. So that's why I was asking the question. But as far as Black Ridge goes, you are working now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and what we're talking about as far as future is coming up next. I think that's, we're getting confused a little bit as of where we were, and I think a lot of this discussion really falls under 17, not 16 right now.
Any other comments from the audience? Mr. Schultz?
Robert Schultz, 348 Albemarle Drive. I have a quick question. One of the statements that was made is that 31 acres are going to be added to this PUD, and Mr. Belcher said that there was no plans at this time to add any homes to that 31 acres. My question is it possible that in the future homes could be put on these 31 acres?
Mr. Belcher? Would you like to address that?
Yeah, if I stated on those specific 31 acres, that's incorrect. What my intention was to state that there would be no additional homes added to the Black Ridge PUD. There certainly could be homes built on that particular 31 acres. It's just not an increase to the existing PUD in terms of number of units already approved.
No additional building.
That's correct, no additional profile.
All right. Anything else on this particular item? Good stuff comes next. All right, we have a motion and a second. We're going to start off with a roll call for the second reading of 17, 23, 34.
Mr. Green?
Nay.
Mr. Wyatt?
Aye.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Shaw?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye. All right, next, we need a motion to approve the Black Ridge First Amendment as presented.
Mr. President, I would move to approve the Black Ridge First Amendment.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. not require a roll call. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item 17. You gonna stick with us?
Yes, sir.
All right. Mr. Belcher, representing USS P.R. Wilburn SP Development Corp., is requesting approval of the 11th Amendment to the Trace Crossing PUD. There are items 1 through 6. Mr. Corley, perhaps you could give us a little advice handling these as a group, except for the second readings required in the roll call votes.
Yes, Mr. President. I understand that, we want to handle those the same way we handled item 16, which is to conduct the second reading of each ordinance. Take a vote on those individually, and then have a motion to approve the overall amendment at the conclusion of the second reading.
All right, why don't we get the second readings out of the way for all three? And then we can start general discussion, and if it's the will of the body, and this is something I want to hear from y'all, do we want to, before voting any of the second reading ordinances, we want to talk the subject completely out and then vote those at the end, or whatever's decided? Or do you want to vote them in numerical order as they arise?
Mr. President, I would say in the whole, because as evidenced from 16, we already got into discussion on
Right.
ahead of time, so I'll say in the whole.
That's why I was throwing it out there. Or do you see any parliamentarian rules?
That's the prerogative of the chair, and each ordinance requires a roll call vote, so we should make those separately.
Okay. Why don't you,
Make a motion for each of those at the time you vote.
all right, can you go ahead and perform the second readings before we start into our,
Yes.
all but
You should take
short
a
of
motion
the
at
may
the time.
be conversations? Thank you, sir.
All right. Ordinance number 17-2335 rezones the property described as parcels A through I on the exhibit attached to the ordinance and shown on the map attached to the ordinance as PR1 Planned Single Family District. Ordinance number 17-2336 rezones property currently known as Fleming Farms property and Fleming Farms 2 property as PR1 Planned Single Family District. This property is fully described and shown on exhibit A to the ordinance. Ordinance number 17-2337, second reading. Rezones property currently known as parcel A and B, or shown as parcel A and B on the attached exhibit as PC Planned Commercial District. This property is fully described and shown on exhibit A to the ordinance. This is a request by Richard Johnson, representing U.S. Steel Corporation, for a conditional use approval for a town center with mixed-use residential being part of the 11th Amendment to the Trace Crossings PUD. This property is currently zoned planned light industrial restricted PIR.
Mr. Corley, do you feel that it's appropriate to go ahead and hold discussions prior to any motions being made?
Yes, it's the prerogative of the chair. We've read those ordinances. We're going to have a motion to approve overall.
I just wanted to make sure the record.
Conclusion. So, you know, you don't have to take a discussion, then I would say you could make a motion for each item individually.
I just wanted the record to show legislative intent as much as anything else. So, I'm gonna read these, and then, we will start, our conversation immediately thereafter, starting with the council. And, so item number 1, transfer 141 single-family units from the Black Ridge PUD to Trace Crossings PUD. Item 2, transfer 300 single-family residential units from USS property south of Highway 52 to Trace Crossings PUD. Item 3, add approximately 100 acres of land known as the food property, currently zoned NC, not zoned, to the Trace Crossings PUD, along with approximately 22.2 acres of additional land currently zoned R1 residential and A1 agriculture, all to be rezoned PR1 planned single family. and also rezone approximately 148.7 acres of land within Trace Crossings PUD, currently zoned PI planned industrial. This will have a roll call vote. Item number 4, add approximately 211 acres of unincorporated Shelby County, known as Fleming Farms parcels 1 and 2, currently zoned Shelby County Agricultural Special District to the Trace Crossings PUD to be pre-zoned to Hoover PR1, planned single family. Item 5, rezone 2 acres of parcels of land, approximately 24 acres and 28 acres from planned industrial to PC, planned commercial within the Trace Crossings PUD. Item 6, someone representing the U.S. Steel Corporation requesting conditional use approval for a town center with mixed-use residential being part of the 11th Amendment to the Trace Crossing PUD. U.S. Steel Corporation is the property owner, and the property is zoned planned light industrial restricted. This is in conjunction with a request to rezone the property to PC. The proposed town center adds 74 residential units to the USS dwelling unit cap. All that being said, there have been some changes since the first reading. Mr. Belcher, I know that there have been some changes even since Thursday, but instead of rehashing everything today, let's start with what has changed since the first reading tonight.
Yes, sir, and again, for the record, Jonathan Belcher, representing Signature Homes, address is 3545 Market Street, Hoover, 35226. As you mentioned, Mr. President, we think we had a lengthy discussion at the 15th council meeting and then a little more discussion last Thursday. So I'll just cover those items that have been changed since then. The only areas, when you look at the overview map that have changed, are those in the center of the plan, which are parcels 4, 6, and 10. Shown here on the map, the area shown in yellow is parcel 4. That area has not changed aside from some additional buffer that I'll mention a little later. But parcels 10 and 6 are different. What we heard from the residents of Chestnut Ridge is that they like the previous plan. The previous plan included all single-family detached homes as a buffer in between the commercial area and their homes there in Chestnut Ridge. So that's what this plan reflects. And what parcel 10, the zoning that's proposed for parcel 10 is a PC mixed use or planned commercial mixed use. And within that zoning district, single-family detached homes are allowed. One of the changes is that prior to this update since the last council meeting is that we agreed to restrict the homes from being attached townhomes, and also we agreed to restrict the homes that there'd be no residential above commercial units in that area. So all of the back portion of parcel 10, which you see on this map here, and then the back portion of parcel 6, same thing. This represents all single-family homes that are detached and will be located in that area. The one change that's made because of the back half of parcel 6 changing to this mixed use, there'll be an increase of 20 more single-family residences than were previously requested. So the request on item number 6, 74 units, prior to tonight was 54 units. Again, our proposal would be to remove those items from Trigger Creek, or those units from Trigger Creek to this particular parcel. Parcel 10 and parcel 6 will now include a total of 24 acres of commercial property. Parcel 10 is approximately 14 acres, and then parcel 6 is approximately 10 acres. We have added a 100-foot wide buffer, which again I mentioned earlier, and I'll show on this buffer plan. On the bottom of 4, so that area will be restricted and maintain a buffer along Stadium Trace Parkway. That's the one addition. Other than that, the buffers that you see on this slide and the slide previous are the same buffers presented before. We also have some restrictions that I'd like to hand out. These are items that U.S. Steel has agreed to covenant and restrict on parcels 6 and 10 in the commercial areas.
mind passing those out, please? This is a document that we have just passed back and forth. It's the most recent document that we have shared with the residents of Chestnut Ridge. There's approximately 25 original items on there. Some have already been agreed to, but then again, there are some that have not been agreed to. We've come to some compromise, but there's certainly some items that the residents would still like to be restricted that we were unable to agree to at this time. The last slide that I wanted to show tonight is the Fleming Farms parcel. This is the location of the Fleming Farms Master Development Plan. I tried to reuse the word tonight. It just happens to be the terminology that Shelby County uses. And this is what's zoned A1 or agricultural special district, as you mentioned earlier. This development plan is 198 acres, and it's approved for 2 units to the acre, which equates to 396 homes as is zoned today. The minimum lot size that's approved with this plan is 40 feet for a single-family detached lot, and it's 24 feet for an attached townhome. The site has been engineered. There's a Corps of Engineers plan that's in place, and that would allow for that many homes to be constructed today. Validated this with the planning department at Shelby County, and this is something that we could go and submit for a preliminary map and start construction without any zoning hearings in Shelby County. The area that's shaded in brown, here on the top right-hand side of the page, that's currently in the city of Hoover and is zoned R1. An R1 zoning requires a 15,000 square foot minimum. This site is approximately 40 acres, and conservatively, if you just assume 1 home per acre on R1, then that would be 40 single-family homes there. And between these 2 parcels shown, that's 436 homes that could be built on this particular property, and that would be part of the traffic load on Stadium Trace Parkway today. I have heard the traffic concerns, and I share in them. I think I said that last time because of the investment we've made at the end of Stadium Trace Parkway. We're the last people that want to compound a traffic problem there. I think it's important to point out that if our plan's approved, these 436 homes go away. And what we're asking to replace them with are 374 homes. But those 374 homes are being removed from an already approved area in the city limits of Hoover. So it reduces the traffic coming from that location and reduces the need to serve that particular location. It does not increase the number of homes that would access Stadium Trace Parkway. Because again, if it's built in the way it is approved today, it'd be 436. The 200 we're requesting to move to Fleming, 100 moved to parcel 4, and then the 74 down to parcel 10 would be 62 less homes added on Stadium Trace Parkway. Furthermore, the proposal that we have is a net reduction or a complete elimination of 211 acres of existing commercial property. That will produce 0 additional traffic by the elimination of 211 acres of the commercial property. So in total, our plan is removing, it's going to be a net of 62 less homes from a traffic standpoint and 211 acres of commercial that will no longer exist and access Stadium Trace Parkway. As far as the school impact, we are adding 515 homes to the Trace Crossings PUD. 141 of those are in Black Ridge already, the 374 in Trigger Creek. There is no doubt that each new home added has the potential for adding a student in our school system. And that's why we make sure that we've collaborated with the school board. We made sure that Dr. Murphy was aware of these plans prior to the Black Ridge rezoning, and we've kept her up to date with any changes that have occurred. So we would assume that everything on this side of the Hoover High School would continue to go into Hoover High School. There may be some adjustments made at the elementary school and possibly intermediate school level, but all the students that would be added would be in the same place, whether they were in Trigger Creek or they were shifted to the Trace Crossings PUD. It would still be Hoover High School students. And finally, as I mentioned before, the proposal adds 282 acres of park land that currently does not exist at Trace Crossings today. Thank you.
Mr. Belcher, if you would, let's talk about the commercial where additional restrictions are placing on says, as far as the commercial property, what uses have been added to the things that cannot go?
So the way this list derived was, we had a meeting with the Chestnut Ridge, a number of the residents there. They made a proposal, which is the list you have before you, which was created by taking the current allowed uses in the PC zoning. And then there were items that were on there that they wanted excluded or prohibited from there. The list shows the items that we could come to an agreement on, which are under, I think, items 54. And then the items that were requested to be prohibited, such as the drive-throughs. There was a bank and drive-through, or excuse me, the bank and restaurants with drive-throughs, a pharmacy that had a drive-through, and then one other use, cleaners, that we wanted to have, that we wanted to remain as an allowable use there. We did amend our PUD document so that no standalone drive-through fast food restaurant would be allowed either on parcel 6 or 10. So that was an example of some of the items that were restricted and some that we were not able to compromise on.
You also restricted no fast food?
Yes, sir.
And size of the businesses are capped at 15,000 square feet?
Well, on the, on any grocery store, we agreed to limit any footprint there to under 15,000 square feet. We were not able to come to a compromise on the footprint simply because in the preserve, for example, if we did limit the building size, some of the buildings that wrap the corner there on Preserve Parkway would not be allowed if we did limit one building to that 15,000 square feet. We understand that puts some concern of some uses that we wouldn't want to have there, nor would U.S. Steel. We just weren't able to come to clarity on that agreement as to how to accomplish that, other than agreeing that U.S. Steel would covenant to protect the neighborhood as they have up to this point.
I heard wrong last week. I thought there was a 15,000 square foot cap. Any,
That was certainly discussed. Yes, sir, that 15,000 feet would be the maximum footprint. And then we were unable to reach a full agreement on that.
questions and comments from the council?
Mr. President,
Sir.
I've made it no secret throughout, the first reading and now that the issue, number one issue I have is the transfer of units. I went back and pulled with the help of our city clerk, the ordinances that are mentioned in these recitals. And the one from 1996, 96 says 1530 states, item number 2, not more than 800 dwellings may be constructed in the subject property, which is the Brock's Gap zone, the Brock's Gap density. Any units constructed on the subject property shall serve to reduce the number of units which may be constructed on the following USX properties currently in Hoover, which at that time were Reserve, Lake Crest, Shades Creek properties, East Heatherwood PUD, 40 acres to Inverness, and the County Road 52 property, which is Trigger Creek. That same, the same recitals are in the O2. Now here's my question. Rather than, since right now that number, and these are 800, but in here is 850, you've got 77 units remaining in Brock's Gap. Why not go ahead and build the 77 in Brock's Gap? Go ahead and fill up that 850, and then move units from Trigger Creek, rather than moving units from Trigger Creek now, keeping the 77, and then according to paragraph I under section 5, having the ability to take those units in Brock's Gap if they are not used and transfer them within Brock's Gap, which would be reasonable, but then taking those to Trigger Creek. Why not go ahead and build out to the cap and then do your transfers?
Well, when we asked the question of U.S. Steel, they shared with us they have several locations still remaining within trace crossings that they've got preliminary site plans for. They were going to use the majority of those 77, and then some of the remaining ones from existing plans that were not yet constructed.
So in new plans, we would see those 77 developed in addition to what's being moved. Okay.
Yes, sir.
That explains that question.
And one example, just in Lake Trace, there was a road extension done on the opposite side of the lake. It was just a single road, and there was only 6 home sites. But there's an opportunity to do that also on the lake that services Scout Creek on that same side, is one example of the properties that was mentioned.
So this would be coming for planning zoning, just, we're not sure right now, but in the near future.
That's correct, just
Would
that,
add enough footprint.
that area is still owned by U.S. Steel, so it'd just be when they do.
Okay, the other issue that I've mentioned has to do, and this is a question for Dr. Murphy, with the schools. Because Trigger Creek, while working off an annexation agreement from 1993, is not zoned, and we do not know when it's zoned exactly what that's going to look like. Now, we do know from 1996 that, this is, let me turn the page here, that density was lowered from 2655 to 2318 because 150 acres of the property was rezoned to be a business park. So we do know that it's a little bit lower, but other than that, it's not zoned, and we do not know what that's going to look like. We know that eventually there'll be a zoning plan PUD like there is with anything else. But since that is not zoned, and there are school properties that could be built, could be enacted down there depending on what's built, that would completely change Dr. Murphy's dynamics, whether that's an elementary school, high school, or something like that. I need to have that satisfied from you, Dr. Murphy, is to say, looking at this, looking at these numbers, these transfers of units, are you satisfied that you could make this plan work with what you have existing now in the school system, and that it would not be an impact on you that would be detrimental?
Yes, so we've studied and restudied, and let me thank Jonathan and the city for keeping us abreast of this process. And as we've looked at the 515 homes, we believe that that will yield 211 additional students based on how we do that, our calculations, which is 0.41 students per door. Based on the percentage breakdown of our elementary, middle, and high school students from the 515, and then I'm going to come to your question more specifically, that would give us 93 elementary students, 49 middle school students, and 69 high school students. And again, we determined that by looking at the percentage of that number of students, how many would be elementary, middle, and high school. We know at Hoover High School we already are bumping on the door of capacity issues, and that we will really need more capacity regardless of the location of these particular homes. If they're further south or if they're pulled into the Trace Crossings PUD, we've been very clear that we need to be thoughtful now as a school district and as a city. Now what? Is that an extension to Hoover High School, or is that some conversation about a third high school for us as a city? We currently, as many of you know, and we've shared with you, we have some architectural firms taking a look with us at a possible expansion to Hoover High School and possibility as an option a third high school. Obviously, the expansion of Hoover High School would mean more traffic on Stadium Trace, and so we're sensitive to that. Obviously, some of our concerns are the unknowns that are south, the Trigger Creek area. And so what we did in our presentation to the court is that we basically submitted looking at the railroad crossing in the Lake Wilborn area. North of that would be in the Trace Crossings School, and anything then south of that railroad crossing would go to South Shades Crest. So I say that to you to say somewhere along the way, we as a school district, and certainly with the input of Judge Heikela, will need to make a decision about where is that line for which students will go to Trace Crossings, and where is that line for those students that will go to South Shades Crest. And we were very thoughtful about this process in our presentation to the court, and we actually left capacity at both South Shades Crest and capacity at Brock's Gap Intermediate School
in anticipation of the growth to the south of the city. Based on what we have, based on our study and many conversations with many of our stakeholders, our city and Jonathan and others, we are comfortable that we can accommodate what is on this plan. But I also would be remiss to not say to you that I think we have to continue as a city and as a school district to collaborate about the ways that we continue to be supported by our city. And obviously, if we get into any conversations about expansions of schools and or building a new school, we would certainly want this city and obviously this council to be thoughtful with us about how we financially support that. So with growth comes obviously additional students, and with additional students, obviously needed capacity in our schools and seats and buildings to put those students in. If I miss responding to your question, I'll try to revisit that.
Oh, no, ma'am, you're fine, and actually I was going to touch on one of the points you made. From the minutes of this January 3rd, 1994 meeting, something came up that you mentioned, and that is that former Mayor McCollum, at this time as a member of the council, where they were talking about the front door fees, and she said that on this property, Trigger Creek, that they would project to be 1,600 students, and that school officials at that time, again in 1994, projected that an enhanced building fee of $3,500 per home would be required to provide the current operating and building costs necessary to educate these additional students. You know, as we know, that's been something that's gone back and forth several times and has not been adjusted except with your generosity in Black Ridge, the $3,100 per door there. Is that something that when you were talking about the responsibility of providing for the school system, would that be something along the lines of what you were mentioning?
We were thinking $10,000 per front door fee. How's that?
Very good.
No, obviously, to be more serious in my response is you know, whatever thoughtfulness can be brought to the table as it relates to whatever revenue sources and streams can support our children. If that's additional front door fee, if that's, I don't know, I don't want to say tax, gas tax, lodging tax, I don't know. I don't purport to tell you what that is. I do purport to tell you that we have children that we love and they're precious to us and we need to educate them well, and Hoover does that, and we'll need your support to do so in the future.
Thank you. I have one more question. And
Mr. President, can I piggyback on you?
Go ahead, sure. Absolutely.
Mr. President, you mind if I piggyback on
Mr. Posey yields his position.
Have it.
Okay, just a quick comment to Dr. Murphy. I know we kind of, I wouldn't say you skirted around it. You answered the question. But the question I have is, the near future is when? Like now? Is that now, or is that 10 years down the road? Because and let me just make this point, because I remember being at a school board meeting, and expansion for Hoover High is, if we're talking about expansion for Hoover High, that's a now need, which means a 3-year process, meaning buying property and building, and the build out, which is 3 years, which is now. But if the plan is for future, to kind of consolidate and save that dollar and move in the direction of new high school, you're talking about $80-some million plus, which is more debt services. So the question is where we truly at with the high school, the needs are up like now, and also what are we truly at with the elementary school front, because the courts is a very engaging on that conversation, as you know, and to drive by one elementary school, Trace Crossing, and go to another elementary school, they frown upon that. So with that being said, is in the next 0 to 3 years moving forward, how difficult is this going to be outside of what's going on right here, that the city leadership need to really knuckle down on long-term planning for the school district, as far as in terms of master planning?
Well, right now, just to share with you that the Trace Crossings is currently at 49% capacity. So with this building and what is proposed this evening, we have currently capacity to support those students at the elementary school where we have 49% capacity. Remember, we've owned this from the beginning with the public to say that not only do we need to rezone because it is a part of the desegregation court order, but we've also said that we need to rezone because we have some of our schools that are not being used nearly to capacity while other schools are. But right now, to answer directly for this day and time, Trace is at 49%. With this proposal, should it be approved, those students will have room to come into Trace. As the additional growth occurs, and correct my numbers if I have this wrong, 2,000 additional homes in the trigger area?
Yes, ma'am, based on this, if this proposal is approved tonight, it'd be slightly below 2,000.
And so if you're not looking at another 2,000 students that could come from the far south of that, obviously we do not have that particular capacity, and we're going to have to talk as a city about, you know, is that not just a high school, but is there a need for additional schools such as elementary schools? And again, Mr. Murphy, if I missed answering, bring me back to the ranch.
So on this current plan now, proposal,
Yes.
Will there be enough capacity at Trace Crossings?
Yes, so at Trace Crossings, right now we're at 49% current capacity. However, there's another wrinkle in this process that none of us can forget, and that is that we have a rezoning plan in front of the federal judge. And upon that being approved as it's currently been submitted to the court, that's going to in and of itself increase the capacity at Trace Crossings to 75%. So we've got to be thoughtful about what's before the court for rezoning. In addition to that, what's before you this evening. But I will say to you that considering both of those, based on our calculations with our rezoning plan and the growth that is on the table at this current time, that would take Trace Crossings to 97% capacity. We really don't like to be there. Our preference is 80 to 90% capacity, and certainly when you start talking about a school functioning at 97% capacity, that's not ideal for the teaching and learning process for our children. Did that help?
Can I ask one more question, Mr. President? Okay. We talked about schools. Thank you, Dr. Murphy. I think you're off the hot seat now. The next thing that we're going to need to discuss is with this plan, that bothers me again, it has nothing to do with you guys. It's how are we going to get all these good people out here, out of their neighborhoods? We've got to figure out whether we do this plan or don't do this plan. We got to find a new way out of Trace Crossings, because right now there are 2 ways out. So for that, you guys from the city, I'd ask you to give us some options.
I think we have one of the premier traffic engineers in the state of Alabama present this evening, Mr. Darrell Skipper. If he could help us answer that question, we sure would appreciate it.
I think the premier may not outlive everybody else in practice. And certainly no stranger to Hoover. Again, Darrell Skipper, 3644 Van Road, Birmingham, Alabama. I must say the city of Hoover has never been bashful about stepping up to the plate and providing the infrastructure that's needed for the city to keep the economic engine going, to provide the services that the residents look to here to support all facets of living here in Hoover, which has made the Hoover as attractive as it is. We're very fortunate that people want to come here and live, go to school here, shop here, those type of things. Not too many communities in the state are in your situation. With that comes some other things, but y'all have been willing to step up, and over the last 20, 25 years are good evidence of that. You know, the Galleria was built a number of years ago. Galleria Flower was built to open up the 150 Valley. I call it the 150 Valley, from 31 down to 459 interchange. that was built. Chapel Lane, and that's one of the roads that's on the city's major street plan. An impending extension of that, south down to South Laurel Road is another part of that, phase 2 of that. So those are some, but the city has always been willing to work with developers in making sure that they adhere to the city's major street plan. Ross Bridge Parkway is a cooperative project that is in the city's major street plan to provide those connectivity. Other improvements you all have done are massive, you know, the 459 and 150 improvements that have been done recently. The city engaged our firm to undertake an interchange justification study 2 or 3 years ago as part of a major street plan to find a new interchange at Shades Crest Road. Certainly one is needed. And the only thing that's needed is money. That interchange justification study was approved by the city, approved by the Department of Transportation, and approved by the Federal Highway Administration. So it's teed up, ready to go. That is another avenue to 459 from this area. Now, is that the only avenue? Certainly, one of the things we've been looking at recently is that area between 150 and also Shades Crest. Those things we could do to put an additional outlet there. Yes, there are. There's some things that would, the city's planning process that they have advertised or consultants to help them do. That's one of the elements of that plan was update your major street plan to look at that. We've actually produced some preliminary sketches to kind of give the city staff some what ifs. What kind of money would it cost, and what do you have to do to get that money? So that's been done. Not prepared to address any real specifics of that. You're exactly right. One of the things we need to do is offload the Shades Crest intersection at 150. We're getting, Brock's Gap was another one of those development projects. It was built to service and provide service to the high school and the other schools from that enormous development we got on South Shades and North Shades, the other side of 150. That's another one of those to keep you off of 150s, keep you off of that end of Stadium Trace. One of the major parts of the major street plans was to extend Stadium Trace down to 52 and keep it as a public accessible roadway. One of the things that the city found out that if we do that, we're going to get a big offloading of Helena and other development traffic right through there and exacerbate the problems we already have. So that was one of the reasons I'll kind of change your focus on that end, is keeping it looking like that. So the city's never been bashful about it. There are plans teed up. There are ways to mitigate that. And the particular proposal that's in front of you tonight, the overall changes that they're looking at, quite frankly, they've changed the plans from the current zoning for the overall property to give you about a 22% reduction in the amount of traffic they could produce if developed as zoned, as right. The properties that I would call them those lots 4, 6, and 10, through meetings with the residents who concerned that they've heard, they've reduced the development density in there, and the amount of traffic that will generate for those 4, 6, and 10 is down 47%. I think this is the kind of thing y'all have done in the past in working with developers. Developers come to the table to do things in a quality manner and produce those kind of reductions. So that's the kind of thing we encourage you to continue to do to make sure it's responsible, the right density, so that you're not having overbuild. Now, we did point out there's some things that are already in play under design to do some improvements at Learning Lane, Fox Gap there at Stadium Trace to add left turn lanes on Stadium Trace and Brock's Gap, and also a northbound right turn to accommodate that right turn going to the high school. Also in this report, we identified some other improvements to be made, in particular up at Stadium Trace at 150, adding an additional right turn lane off of 150 to come south on Stadium Trace to make it a double right, and to pick up a lane down about 1,500 feet, so that could be done. Also to add another through lane northbound on Stadium Trace to get you across to Preserve Parkway. If you've got any specific questions, I'm going to try to answer them as best we can. I was trying to address the specific question that you brought up.
Mr. President, use
questions, for traffic itself. Upon the current plan that the proposal is looking at as far as, traffic, modifications, what time frame do you believe, if this plan was to be approved, that those modifications will be made per proposal?
Well, the overall development schedule for all of these is 10 years. And so the improvements have to be made commensurate with the project being built out. Now, as far as going back and identifying the exact amount of improvement that must be made with each individual improvement, we've not gone to that depth. That's something that normally we would work with the city staff once this is approved and the improvements are identified as to when they come online.
Well, let me ask this, so, let's talk about, Learning Lane intersection. That will be a part of a 10-year process?
My understanding is that, and I think city staff could address that better than me, that's under design, and I think it's a project that's being undertaken by the city, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, sir, Mr. Murphy, that project is currently under design. We hope to have it nearing construction towards the end of this year.
Okay, so, the intersection of, Learning Lane, where a lot of your traffic is coming the backside of what we call the eastbound lane that runs behind, Trace Crossing, that area, it connects to Hoover High School, Buccaneer Drive. What estimated time, I know design is, what estimated time we're looking for start? When will it start, projected?
I think what you're referring to is the additional access that the city is proposing to build over to Hoover High School.
That and also the intersection of Learning Lane on Stadium Trace, all of that. When is that?
Well, the second access over to Hoover High School, the notice to proceed was issued for that construction actually today. We would anticipate that that would be open before the SEC tournament next year for that second access, which would actually tie into the back entrance to Trace Crossings Elementary School, thereby allowing a secondary access to the elementary school by next SEC baseball tournament. As far as the Learning Lane, Brock's Gap intersection, that project will probably take a year and a half to construct. It's a very complicated construction process, trying to allow traffic to continue to move through that intersection while it's being constructed. I would estimate that will take a year and a half.
Is that a part of this proposal, is that a part of the city's ability to budget for that?
That is actually a budgeted project that we already have.
So we already budgeted for that?
That's correct.
So if we're saying design is nearly complete for that, we can start on that right after, and that's roughly a 2-year project, you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
There's some discussion, again, I guess we can't talk about specifics when you're talking about egress out of that area, because you're talking about property and other legal concerns, so we have to be limited on conversation with that. This year's budget is about to come up again, September, I believe. Will this council, I won't speak on behalf of the council, will I see some ideals and proposals for that this year, or some discussions about egress out of that area?
I think what you'll see, Mr. Murphy, is that the city is very interested and very focused on this particular area, but potentially alternate routes out there affect multiple neighborhoods. And so we feel like any of those proposed alternate routes, to be fair to the entire public throughout the city, probably needs to come out as a part of the comprehensive master plan.
So 10 months, so, okay. To answer that question on that end, one quick point back to the school, Dr. Murphy answered my question as far as elementary, but just get a definitive answer on the high school portion of that. With this current proposal, current date now and proposal, bill out. So current date now, population, and proposal bill out. What will the school system require as far as capital and also operational?
So currently at Hoover High School, we're at 90% capacity. With rezoning, that'll drop about 1%, so we'll go to 89%. With the build-out, Hoover High School will be at 110%. So thus, we know there has to be an expansion and/or a third high school. With the thought that it'll take some time for that build-out to occur, hopefully that gives the school district and the city leadership opportunities to talk about what the plan should be. But we certainly are already being proactive, as I shared with you earlier in our study about is that an expansion or is that a third high school? So with complete build out, no, Hoover High School cannot tolerate the capacity. Currently, yes, it'll take some time for us to get to that point. Tell you what date and time would obviously be contingent upon the speed with which those homes are being opened and the rate at which those children then come to our door.
So we're not talking about trailers in the back of Hoover next year?
I can't promise you that. I certainly, none of us are excited about bringing mobile units onto our campuses. It's not who we are, it's not what we want to do. But we obviously have a commitment to make sure that we're educating our students with lots of opportunities and electives, and that we're doing so in a fashion where we believe in smaller class size than many other school districts are able to afford, and I don't think our community wants us to go to a situation where we're packing large numbers of students into a single class with a teacher. So we're very thoughtful about our student to teacher ratio, and so given that and the speed at which these homes will come online and children come to us, but we are already planning for this.
Okay, thank you.
I just can't be very exact with you.
Thank you. My last question, I think it's my last question. Parcel, Mr. Belcher presented to us a parcel design priority. And question number 2, that discuss about if you can come up with a legal opinion by Monday regarding hotels being navigated adjacent to parcel 4, and at that point you will restrict hotels on parcels 6 and 10. What was that about? I mean, what do we come to that?
So, yes, sir, we were looking at the alternative of potentially restricting a hotel on parcel 6 and 10, if we could find an alternative across the street from parcel 4. But with the rezoning of that to PR1, the same boundary district would apply, and it would prohibit hotels from being built across the street. That's what we're trying to determine, if we could identify a way to allow for hotels to be built on the opposite side of the stadium trace. In conjunction with tonight, we were unable to do that legally, and that'd be something that could be binding for U.S. Steel to have the assurance that they could be built there. So the short answer is no, we're not able to get to that point tonight, but there's certainly some alternatives that we're working on going forward after this evening.
So let's say in the event that you were to find out that that's possible, how would that conversation go?
Well, U.S. Steel's certainly been open to that, and after tonight, regardless of the outcome, that's something that door's been open, and then be conversations between U.S. Steel and the city staff to discuss those options.
Okay, and this is the last question, Mr. President. Conversation was made about Black Ridge and front door fees equated about 3,100. That's correct?
I think it's 3,000.
3,000. And Trick Creek homes equate to what, 1,700?
I think it would just fall under the normal $1,500 fee now.
Was any consideration to kind of just, since it's going up on the same amendment, to match that same?
Yes, sir. Any density units that we would be moving from Black Ridge would certainly carry that fee. And we're happy to do the same with any density units moving from Trigger Creek.
What fee?
That
Which
would
one?
be building the thank you, the $3,000 fee,
So
which
all
is
those-
$1,500 higher than the current fee.
So with this proposal, don't let me put words in your mouth, I'm just gonna say it out here. Every home built in that area will come with a $3,000 front door fee?
No, sir, just the homes in Black Ridge,
Mm.
and then the 374 homes that would be transferred from Trigger Creek, and then 141 homes that are moved from Black Ridge to Wilburn. And what we have proposed at the planning and zoning and prior to planning and zoning is that we would just add that fee to the first 141 homes permitted in Wilburn. That way we know it would take place.
Okay, so let me make sure I'm clear. So will every home in this proposal come with that $3,000 fee, or can it?
In this proposal, yes, sir.
It will
It
come
it
with,
would exclude the 499 homes in Lake Wilburn that exist today, and the 77 homes that Councilman Posey mentioned earlier, that are still existing in Tres
and
Crossings.
it's too late to retrofit that.
I don't know, that's,
I'm not answering it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I have a
One thing real quick, but the $3,000 fee is not assessed to Trigger Creek, because it has yet to have any development conversations.
that's correct. There is no zoning approved in place in Trigger Creek.
Dr. Newbrook.
in item 6 down here, it says the proposed town center would add 74 residential units to the U.S. Steel dwelling cap. I need you to clarify that statement, because you're saying, this says add, but you says transfer from Trigger Creek. Which one is it?
It is a reduction to Trigger Creek, so it's transferring from Trigger Creek. So yes, sir, that'd be a correction to the statement on item 6. Thank you.
I have a couple questions.
Mr. Shaw, before we change subjects, just one thing I wanted to mention, and Dr. Murphy can correct me here if I'm wrong, but I think at build-out, the 110% capacity for the school is the build-out of all of the Tres Crossings, Wilburn, Black Ridge, and the Trigger Creek properties. So that would be all those included.
That is correct.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Mr. President, I'm not quite done.
I'm sorry.
Don't take any time.
Go back to the,
I'll have to be working till about 10 o'clock tomorrow.
better get on ordering those pieces. Okay, to go back to the front door fee once again, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
374 from Trigger Creek, 141 from Black Ridge.
Yes, sir.
They will all be $3,000 imposed front door fee.
That's over and above the normal permit fees that occur, yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, all of those fees, $3,000 for those homes, those will all go directly to the schools, above and beyond the $5 million that we've already committed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Shaw.
Yes, just a couple of quick things. Mr. Westover, if you could, real quick, couple questions on, I can see you smiling already. Over the months, I've talked with several folks about options for additional, and this goes to Mr. Posey's question too, additional access to Tres Crossings. I've seen several options. What are all the options, not list them, but what are the total number of options that there are out there? Is it 4, 5, 10, things that have been drawn up, considered? You don't have to go into detail on it, but how many total options are there out there to evaluate?
Well, what I want to say is there's numerous. What the question you're asking is what options are out there that are doable? I mean, you can come up with the options that are clearly not doable.
It's infinite options.
But I would say there's 4 or 5.
And then for Mr. Martin, anything you've seen, you've called this a localized master plan. Is there anything you've seen in this plan that would preclude or cause a problem in generating a comprehensive master plan for the city?
I don't necessarily see anything here that would upset that issue. Certainly, what is done tonight, what is approved tonight or not approved, That's another layer of information that we use when we do the work of the comprehensive plan. So, yeah, whatever the result of tonight is will help inform our comprehensive plan with regard to this part of town. But I don't see anything in the proposed plan that would upset the process. If anything, it provides a little more clarity for us as to what we need to plan for as far as transportation options in and out, and provides more granularity for this portion of the city than you would normally find in a comprehensive citywide master plan.
That's it, Mr. President. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions from the council? Before we open the floor to the audience, Mr. Mayor, do you have anything that you would like to bring to the table?
Well, we'll talk about the process more than anything. I appreciate all the input from the developers, city council, staff, particularly our citizens, of course, our school system. We've been very, use a word that Dr. Murphy uses a lot, very thoughtful. We have been very thoughtful in putting this plan together and working with each of these groups. I've been very clear about it when I've spoken in terms of what I thought what we wanted to do in that area was to present something to our city that, particularly that area, that will be a great benefit to the entire neighborhood. We know that it's, someone mentioned about using it as a threat, that it's zoned one way and it's going to be another. The facts are very clear. The zoning is incorrect there for this neighborhood. It's not an industrial piece of property. And therefore, we all want to, our staff, and I think the council, and certainly our citizens, we want to be very deliberate and provide, and very thoughtful, and provide an outstanding development in that area. And I think that this process that we've all worked through, I believe that's what we've done. There's been a lot of give and take. I would love to get everything that I want. I know that each of you would love to get everything that you want. And certainly the citizens want to get everything possibly that they can. They live there, they work in that area, they invested in that area. And that's very important to me as a mayor and as to their leader to make sure that that's what we do. And we've put a great process in place. We have master planned this area. There's no other way to say it. This area has been master planned for the last 7 months. There's nothing else that we could do that would change this area. At the end of the day, we went through a process. We had the town meetings, we had the public hearings, we had the input from our school system, we had the input from our citizens, we had input from each of the council people up here. So we think it's a good plan. Certainly we will honor whatever is voted on here tonight. That's our job, and we'll do that. But I think everyone has worked very, very hard to make sure that this is something that our citizens will be very proud of to have in their neighborhood, and it will complement our city. And I feel very comfortable in saying that we think this is a good plan.
All right. So, Mr. House, we'll leave you out.
Mr. Smith, before the meeting, I gave each one of you two sheets here called recommended changes to the 11th Amendment, dated or stamped as received by the city June 2nd, one was Friday. There's some housekeeping items here, 7 or 8 housekeeping items listed here that any motion to approve should be subject to. The second page has some minor changes to USS CAP to bring it up to speed. All of these recommended changes have been agreed to by the developer. So far this evening, I've only heard one additional change that would need to be made to this list, and that is the requirement that all 515 units, which are the subject of this amendment, be subject to the $3,000 front door fee. So that's one, and we may come up with others as we proceed this evening.
I know that the audience doesn't have privy to this document. A lot of these have, referring to page numbers and amending acreage, deleting the last sentence. A lot of what I would term housekeeping notes. What would you say is the main effect of your recommendations?
First, on pages 5 and 6, just delete parcel 7 from the residential component. Parcel 7 is the property that the city purchased. That's not going to be zoned residential. Page 9 talks about the fact that the Brock's Gap, that areas 4 and 10 will be part of Brock's Gap, and those units in 4 and 10 can be built in 4 and 10 Brock's Gap or go back down to Trigger Creek. We titled this table in a section specifying that those regulations will be specific to all single-family homes, not just those in the PR1 district. Page 14 requires that any deletion of interconnectivity point between parcels shown on the master development plan shall require a major change to the PUD. It's coming back to the Planning Commission Council. All other changes will comply with the general requirements of Article 10, Section 6. Page 19 states that the donation of the property as part of this amendment satisfies Signature Homes' obligation to provide recreation property under the terms of the 1994 annexation summary. And the final one, delete the note on the master development plan, which refers to changes that can be made to the plan. Because those standards for changing the plan are contained in the text. Second page is the overall USX cap, which deals with all the property U.S. Steel owns in the city. The overall cap for the County Road 52 property has been reduced to 1,944 units, down from 2,318. Added another line down there under individual caps for the Trace Crossings 11th Amendment, which increases that by 374 units. It's not 515 units because 141 of the units are coming from Black Ridge, not U.S. Steel, so it wouldn't be included on this chart. And then the first footnote states that the 174 units to be built in areas parcels 4 and 10, as stated previously, can be in Brock's Gap, can be in 4 and 10, or can go back down to Trigger Creek.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
While Mr. House is there. On this document here, the 11th amendment, page 13, Article 10, this deals with the exterior walls of the commercial aspect of the property. I mentioned Thursday night and so forth, I'd like to see our commercial property design specs be beefed up. Here it says the surface of any exterior walls visible from off-premise shall be composed of masonry, stucco, cementous siding, site cast panels with stucco applied paint finish or other materials approved by TCBA with respect to parcel 6 and parcel 10. What's your thoughts on allowing this and on us beefing up the design respect to only include masonry? Now, I will say that U.S. Steel and Signature Homes and the Preserve and Ross Bridge have shown exceptional design with their current proposals. I would just like to see something in writing to maintain this throughout with this proposal as well.
Yes, sir. Most everything in Trace Crossings is brick, veneer. That's what we were shooting for in the beginning. We did not achieve that, and we ended up with this.
Can the representative from this proposal speak on what their plans are, the design?
Again, Jonathan Belcher. Yes, sir, my conversations with US Steel and their commitment is to do just that. I think they were concerned with placing too much restrictions on it simply because they have controlled the covenants and restrictions to date, and everything that's been built in Trace Crossings, which is now a 30-year-old PUD, I think has been pleasing, and the same things have occurred in the preserve, and as you mentioned, Ross Bridge, I appreciate those compliments, as we've been a part of those, but that was the wishes, as US Steel is still controlling the Trace Crossings Business Association and Residential Association, is that they maintain the current powers that they have today without over-restricting as requested.
One last question that I asked Thursday night. I see no language in here concerning pedestrian traffic from these parcels over to across Stadium Trace. Can you speak on that?
Yes, sir. One of the commitments that we made was to place a stamped asphalt and designated pedestrian path to accommodate any traffic moving across from parcels 10 and 6 to the facilities at the Met and the Finley Center.
Doesn't that include a traffic light?
There is a traffic light warranted at the Fleming Parkway intersection, but I don't believe there's one warranted at the intersection of the Met and these parcels at parcel 10.
Just wondering whether or not that would be advisable to help with pedestrian passage from one side of Stadium Trace to the other, since it's a divided lane.
We're certainly open with working with the engineering department on accomplishing a safe passage.
Mr. President, was there some discussion on the pedestrian overpass?
We have not had any internally, no, sir. I mean, in terms of a bridge over the parkway, we have not performed any, either myself and Signature Homes or US Steel, to my knowledge, have performed any studies on an overpass.
I don't know if this should be for Mr. Belcher and Mr. House. The commercial area is going to back towards Stadium Trace, parking on the opposite side, correct? What kind of signage is going to be allowed on the back side facing Stadium Trace?
Do you want to answer that, Bob, or you want to say the same thing, that it's Bob can correct me if I'm wrong here, but the same thing would be based on approvals by the TCBA or Trace Crossings Business Association. We did agree to some restrictions to add to that. One example that was provided from an LCD type sign, like you said, actually furniture, those type signs would be prohibited. But one of the areas that we were not able to come to a conclusion on was signage like at the new restaurant in Moss Rock Preserve. I think it's Tacos and Tequila, Moss Rock Tacos and Tequila, and it has a sign that would not fit in some of the restrictions that were proposed. So that's why we left most of that open still to the TCBA.
So that's yet to be determined.
That's correct.
And USX controls that organization at this time.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from the council?
The last statement, Mr. President.
How about we do one thing, because we're probably gonna have about 5 or 6 last statements. If members of the audience want to speak, if you would start lining up in the wall, maybe no more than 5 or 6, because I don't want your legs to get out like this. If you stand against the wall, then we get something, Mr. Murphy.
And this is more so the question, I think, for city administration now. And I applaud the mayor for consistently meeting with superintendent of schools. But one thing I continually see on every home built is a phrase called Hoover City Schools, which helps me believe that the reason why homes are being sold is because of our school system. And as I believe is a little bit easier probably to build capital projects like buildings and things of that nature, but my concern is in my opinion, I would like to see somewhat of a retreat or a summit or a meeting of the minds between both entities to talk long-term, because a couple of first things that go when you're cutting the budget in schools is your IB program, these things that make the school system what they are. And that including the council, things of that nature. But I would like to put that on record that we would have that conversation sooner than later, as a whole.
I second that.
Don't know that's something to vote. Truly.
I concur.
There you go. All right. With this, we'll start with the gentleman, young gentleman with the glasses. Start with your name and address.
So I like to see.
Same vote.
My name is Donald Barley.
Sir, I need you to address the council. You need to address the council, please.
My name is Donald Barley. I reside at 1608 Creekside Drive in Creekside section of Gardner Homes. My wife and I have lived in Creekside for a little over 9 years. We moved here from Atlanta to be closer to family. We did a lot of searching before we decided on Trace Crossings. Does anyone remember this beautiful brochure? That's what we bought from. And I'm sure a lot of them still have it. And the information that's contained in it is not necessarily what we've been hearing in the last months. It was developed and this area was so well laid out and developed that anybody in their right mind would want to live here. And everything was fine. We were living on our Creekside home. Very impressed with everything in the area. We asked about trains alongside our area, which they told us 3 or 4 a day. Now it's probably like 20 to 25. We were also aware of the firing range, supposedly used by police training. Sometimes now, it could sound like World War II all over again. But no problem, we got over that. Train tracks, we lived there then when we were growing up. In 2008, Creekside had just started on phase 2, across the bridge. We purchased a home about midway between the bridge and the neat little roundabout at the end of phase 2. About that time, the market hit a slump and sales dwindled. One of the 3 builders had already gone bankrupt, and eventually the second one did. The remaining builder finished out his remaining lots and more or less bailed out. Eventually, somebody came along and bought the remaining 56 lots that were left. Only they didn't continue it as phase 2. All of a sudden, it turned out to be Creekside Station. Houses of less value than they were in Creekside phase 2 and 1. Okay, that's fine. They came in there with these $240,000 houses. That was the low price that was listed. We coped and got over that. They built in there 4-sided brick homes with a standalone garage. And you couldn't ask for anything better. Signature came in and did a few in there. But the houses looked fine, and the area looked fine. Once the realization was made by Trace Crossings that people started applying pressure to abort this plan, but to no avail. It has been redesigned many times so far and is still being protested. Signature Homes has revamped it, trying to make it amenable to the residents, still to no avail. I have attended just about every meeting and heard all the carrots being dangled to appease the residents. At each of these meetings, the big sell has been placed before us. Basically, nothing has shown that has changed our minds. After much protesting, plans have been revised again and again and again.
And the last I had on it is of June 1, an article in the Hoover Sun states that the new total is only going to be 1,994 houses, down from 2,318. This figure has never even been mentioned before as far as the public is concerned.
Now you're talking about Trigger Creek.
Sorry?
Are you speaking of Trigger Creek or your neighborhood?
I'm talking about the whole fiasco.
Starting and ending.
At the end of Stadium Trace. From the outset, one of the main objections by the residents has been the problem of traffic flow. We've heard a lot of conversation about that tonight. It was obvious to all that this would create a nightmare. To date, there has been no proposal to resolve that issue. Another way must be found to accommodate the thousands of automobiles. There are only two ways to get in and out of Trace Crossings. Toward the end of the meetings, a city official indicated that, well, there were a couple of possibilities that were being considered, but nothing has ever come of that. Still, not tonight even. The two new streets that are already in progress to assist the traffic flow from the schools is nothing more than another traffic nightmare. This will now mean there are 3 streets coming out onto Stadium Trace, and Brock's Gap are still the only way to get out of there, down to 150. Brock's Gap is often a nightmare now. I believe every child at Hoover High School has his own set of wheels, along with the cut-through traffic from South Shades Crest. People have a hard time getting out of their subdivisions now in the morning. At one of the meetings, the school superintendent, Ms. Murphy, stood up and assured us that Hoover would accommodate any of the influx of students that would be represented by the 2,000 homes. The project is still on paper, and we now read that we need a new 1,200 student high school, or add on a wing to Hoover High. This is now. Portable classrooms are already needed at some of the schools. It appears that all Hoover schools are somewhere in the 90% range of capacity. This one about Trace Crossings being at 49% just blows my mind. I can't imagine we have a school with that few students. We do not have the capability to absorb what we already have, let alone an additional 2,000 homes. And to all this ruckus over school rezoning, another nightmare. This has just cropped up in the last couple of weeks. I missed something.
Now you're looking, you are aware that the school rezoning issue has been going on for well over a year.
Yes, but it hasn't been made that public. And along with this, the crowning blow is the idea of needing a village center with lots of cutesy shops for ice cream, hairdos, coffee shops, with residents above them. Absolutely not needed, nor wanted. No one moved into Trace Crossings is wishing that they had a cutesy little village. Did they think they wanted to, or did they want to walk the corner to get a soda pop or a cup of coffee? That was never a consideration in any of the promotional mumbo jumbo. If the residents of Trace Crossings can't drive a few miles to get to 150 for their fix, that's okay. They never thought a thing about it. The hotels, fast food outfits, coffee houses, all belong on 150. I recently drove up and back of the new Plex and saw lots of empty office buildings for lease. The area looks like the Grand Canyon where they're cutting down the mountain. Every bit of land has been stripped out and cleared. The area should not even be considered as part of Trace Crossings. We also do not want we don't know what the impact of the Plex will have on the area. Time should be allowed for that enterprise to absorb itself. Any food trucks, fast food facilities, they should all be on the grounds of the complex, not across the street. I hope some of the folks have been reading the articles in the Hoover Sun by John Anderson. He has covered the situation from the start. This project should be absolutely denied until all the negative issues can be resolved. The traffic pattern must find another way to move in and out. Forget the village concept. The magnitude of additional 2,000 homes cannot be absorbed at this time. Resolve the school zoning issue and eliminate any possibilities of a hotel entirely in the area. Thank you.
Scar, I believe.
My name is Nancy Carr, 5788 Chestnut Trace, Hoover 35244. I want to thank the City Council. You've been very patient, and I would request that you continue to be so with me. And I want to thank Jonathan as well. We have been meeting with Jonathan on and off for the last couple of weeks, and we've made concessions, he's made concessions, and we appreciate the efforts greatly. When we started this process and the mayor spoke up about the new complex with the Finley Center, the description of a village center or a neighborhood commercial-friendly area was what we talked about. At this point, we seem to have left that process out with the neighborhood part of the commercial area. And that's what I want to address today. From the Articles of Incorporation, you know, Trace Crossings Residential Association is living in Trace Crossings in Chestnut Ridge. We are required to be members of the Residential Association. That is U.S. Steel. Trace Crossings Business Association is also U.S. Steel. The property that is for sale that wants to be developed is U.S. Steel. You know, there's a problem when you have purchased your home in good faith, and I understand what the gentleman before me was talking about, his brochure, because I'm going to hand that out as well. But in the Articles of Incorporation for Trace Crossings Residential Association, it commits Billy Silver to present a unified effort to the members in protecting the value of the property of those members. And I feel like there's a conflict there with what's being requested to be done and his fiduciary responsibilities to us as members of the Trace Crossings Residential Association. When we bought our home, we were also furnished a brochure, you can pass those out please, for Chestnut Ridge. And I'll bring your attention, it starts with, it's not so much a mountain ridge as it is a pedestal. Could we have found a better location for our new neighborhood? Not likely. Along the top of rolling pastoral mountain ridge just seems like a perfect fit. There's no greater amenity than a preserved natural environment. There is no greater amenity than a preserved natural environment, a founding principle of Trace Crossings. In keeping with our lineage at Chestnut Ridge, you'll take in scenic walks, view panoramic landscapes, and fall under the spell of the lake's evening glimmer. Since the pull of our natural surroundings will eventually draw you outside, we've made returning home equally captivating. If you go through here, you'll also see the pictures of what we see today and what we saw when we were sold our homes. There was nothing mentioned here that one day we would walk outside and see a hotel, commercial establishment, or anything else for that matter. We can deal with the residential area that has been requested to be behind us, but a hotel and commercial development that is not neighborhood friendly, neighborhood commercial is not what we are looking for. Since the planning and zoning approved this zoning, a letter was received in our neighborhood stating that timing is everything, as they say. If you happen to be one of those people who are in the selling thinking stages, now is a great time to move forward. In light of the chatter about zoning changes around your neighborhood, it would be best to sell now before all the construction begins. Well, since that happened, here is what has happened. 3 houses, including my next door neighbor, have put up for sale signs, all on the side of the ridge that are overlooking the construction. That does not preserve the value of our homes in Chestnut Ridge. Michelle Cantley sent an email to the mayor and to the city council that talks about bringing commercial uses closer to existing residential neighborhoods. This document is, in other words, bringing neighborhood commercial into residential, and I believe the mayor called it retrofitting suburbia. And this is close to doing that, Mayor. But it also has some specific requests in here. Along the uses, and I urge every one of you to please review this document. Nowhere in here is there a hotel in a neighborhood. So I would please request that you do that.
Ms. Carr, based on conversations we had last night.
Yes.
Does that article address the fact that it has, what could be called a southeastern, if not national, draw right across the street from the proposed commercial? Or is it just talking about hotels in commercial, I mean, hotels proximate to residential areas without something else that's gonna pull people into the community?
Well, you know, we have a unique situation with the investment that's been made at the Hoover Met. But that situation should not be put on the shoulders of the residents that bought in good faith into that community. We don't want to burden the fact that whether the success of the Hoover Met is based on whether a hotel is built in our backyard or not. I believe there are other ways that that can be addressed, that a hotel could be put, 150 is certainly close enough off a stadium trace. And if you've got to put it in an area, put it on the other side of the Hoover Met. There's so much land that's available that's not where my friends and family will pass a hotel to get to our house.
Did your realtors speak about the industrial opportunities that were in your backyard?
No. And to be perfectly honest, the answer we got when we investigated what was going on down there from the realtor that sold us our house that represented U.S. Steel was that U.S. Steel owns that property and they will never develop it. That's what we were told.
Good market.
It was great, and it didn't happen. We were so concerned about what we were dealing with, and we being our neighborhood, our homeowners association hired a land use and zoning consultant. And we met with him to discuss the issues that were presented to us with Amendment 11. And Amendment 11 has been, I feel like I am obligated to go out and plant trees. I've killed so many in printing Amendment 11. I think I've printed maybe 12 versions of Amendment 11, and we still continue to print. And we got some recommendations from the land use and zoning consultant that we hired, and some of his comments are listed here. All of these questions come up if you are talking about neighborhood commercial. And one of the things he states that if parcel 6 is to be considered for a hotel, it likely means that the proposed village center is not intended to serve surrounding neighbors, but is intended primarily to serve visitors to the sports complex and conference center, a de facto entertainment district. And so it clearly indicates that the interest here is not in retrofitting suburbia. It is not to make a walking, commercial, neighborhood-friendly commercial district. It is solely for the purpose of the Hoover Met. And again, we should not, as citizens of Hoover, be expected to shoulder that responsibility. I think that's uncalled for. So what do we want? In Amendment 11, there are several issues with. I've given you in this handout 7 issues that we would like for you to consider and to address. And in each one, I've listed the amendment, the current page number as it was in the last amendment that I received. And I would ask that you add under the restricted or prohibited uses that we cannot add a hotel motel to that area of parcel 6 and 10. Also, to add prohibited convenience stores as a list to the prohibited uses. On page 12, section 3, modify the maximum building height to 2 stories with a maximum building footprint of 10,000 to 12,000 feet.
Let's start real quick. Item 2, I believe, is on the list of prohibited.
It says gas stations. It does not say convenience stores. So, I've not seen it. It's not on my amendment 11 now. There could be another one. Very likely. But it's not on my amendment 11. So that's what I'm asking to have added. Also, to correct the spelling of the name Chestnut Trace, which is misspelled. And also in Amendment 11 on page 12, the maximum net retail sales area for any one single tenant occupied of any of parcel 10 PC areas shall be limited to 15,000 square feet exclusive of stockroom and or warehouse. This presents itself that you could put a huge building there. Doesn't address the building size, it addresses the tenant size. And we find that not to be neighborhood commercial development. In the last amendment before this amendment, there was a statement that said all development on parcel 6 and 10 shall comply with the tree conservation buffer and landscaping provisions of Article 13 of the city zoning ordinance. That was removed from the current Amendment 11, and I would like to have that put back into the Amendment 11. That's the only place that I could find that parcels 6 and 10 tree conservation was addressed, and now it's not in there. As far as traffic, We are all aware that traffic is a major concern today, even without additional developments. The failing report card only proved to document the seriousness of this issue in the last traffic study. In every reference guide we've researched for neighborhood commercial development, infrastructure was addressed before additional commercial, residential, or sports facilities were developed. We would request that a plan that does not include Brocks Gap or Stadium Trace Parkway as an ingress or egress be designed and approved with an estimated start date assigned. The urgency of this issue needs to be acknowledged, along with a commitment from this council and city officials to address this major concern in an aggressive manner.
We talked about this a bit last night, perhaps a show of hands of everybody that has issues with traffic. We put traffic to bed. We know that it's an issue, and we know it's something we're gonna have to address, whether this is approved or not. So,
Yes, sir.
we need to stick to new information.
Yes, I understand. I could not leave it off such an important topic on that. I thank you for your time. I pray that you will understand the seriousness of Amendment 11 and what it does to our residential neighborhood of Trace Crossing. And I would ask that you please, I noticed in the last Amendment 11, rather than a development plan, it was called a master development plan. And Amendment 11 comes far, far from being a master development plan that is associated with the residents of Trace Crossing. I appreciate your time, and I would ask you to please seriously consider more information before this is passed. Thank you so much.
Mr. President, Ms. Carr,
Now, Dr. Casey. It was Dr. Casey on a TV show a long time ago.
on your tree conservation question, I'm looking here on page 13, Article 8. It does have in this latest plan, all development on parcel 6 and parcel 10 shall comply with the provisions of Article 13 of the city zoning ordinance.
Okay.
So that language is in here.
Okay, I didn't have it in mind.
And I do have a question as well.
Okay.
If this plan is not approved, what's the answer to the hotel question? Because right now, from my understanding, from what city personnel tells me, is that a 10, 11-story hotel can go in to the unrestricted industrial area.
Well, I think Bob House said 6 stories. So the 10.
Okay, six stories.
6 stories, yes, sir.
What's the answer to that problem if we don't want a hotel in the area and we vote down this proposal?
Yes, sir.
What's the answer?
The answer is that the city has hired a city planner to develop a master plan. And I believe everyone on this council has agreed that the current zoning is so wrong for this area. It was zoned in 1987, for God's sakes, before the high school was built, before Bumpus Middle School was moved out there, before even the elementary school was built. It was zoned prior to U.S. Steel developing all of these residential neighborhoods around it. So clearly the zoning is wrong today. This whole thing needs to be put on hold until the city planner can get together with the city council, the mayor, the Parks and Recreation Board, and the residents, for God's sakes, and say what the zoning should be. If a village center is the answer, and that will help to support the Finley Center and the Sportsplex, we want to be a part of that. But it needs to be done correctly, and we need time to do that. We are rushing into this like that is the only parcel of land left in America today. I mean, it is so, what is the urgency to do this right now, tonight, when we have hired a man that we are paying to get it right? I just think it is not in the best interest of the city of Hoover to rush into this until he can have 10 months. 10 months is nothing. This was zoned in 1987. Give him 10 months to work on putting the right restrictions, the right zoning in those areas. I am begging you for that. And allow that process to work. And allow us to work with you and make it all successful. The residents would be happy, the schools would be better off, and we wouldn't have a hotel in our backyard. So I think that's a reasonable answer, and I'm not asking to be unreasonable. I'm asking for your serious consideration.
Ms. Carr, it's already zoned where it could have hotels.
I understand that. I don't think they'll build one in 10 months. I think he's got 10 months.
You can get one out of the ground. Are you asking for a citywide moratorium?
I don't know what that is, but
That would mean we stop all building, we put out a closed for business sign at the city.
well, no, I don't want to put a closed for business sign. That's not reasonable either, Gene.
Well, but that would be the only way to be able to deal with the request, because if we're gonna accept the zoning that is currently in place, then they can do what they can do.
You know, that's a rolling of the dice. They might have 10 months. It's been zoned that way since 1987. If they can build a hotel down there in 10 months, I guess I'll have to move.
They don't have to get it built, they just have to get it started.
Well, no,
All they have to do is remove the permits,
they have to get it sold first.
not unless they do it themselves.
Well, I don't know that you are still building hotels right now, but I don't know. That's a risk we take. And if we have to ask, do we ask for a zoning moratorium? I don't know that that is something that I, as a citizen, can ask you to do. I can ask you to be reasonable and to make a wise decision here and not rush into something that I feel is ill-fitted for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clark.
Mr. President, one question to the list we have right here, convenience stores. Any thoughts on that? There was no gas station, it's not permitted in that area about convenience stores.
We're okay with prohibiting those.
So,
Yeah, and Jonathan Belcher, that was the intent behind our prohibition of the gas dispensing facilities, was to prohibit convenience stores. So that will be something we've agreed to prohibit on both parcel 6 and parcel 10, and then additionally on the land that's adjacent to the intersection of Stadium Trace Parkway and Brock's Gap. That's currently owned by USD.
all right, and has Chestnut Trace name has been changed correctly?
Yes, sir.
And Tim Westover addressed the traffic, as well too. So we're looking at, can you just give me a time frame one more time?
Yes, sir, Mr. Murphy. The current project to improve Brock's Gap and Stadium Trace Parkway intersection, we hope to be under construction by the end of this year, and that'll be about an 18-month to 24-month construction process. The additional access off of Stadium Trace over to the high school, the back door to the elementary school, is currently under construction now, just started today, or we issued a notice to proceed today. And
How long was that project?
we expect to have it completed by the next SEC baseball tournament.
Okay. And
As a part of our phase 2 construction of the sports complex.
and the study of egress, other than Stadium Trace will commence following a 10-month,
It'll go in conjunction with the comprehensive master plan.
okay.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Jacqueline Brothers. I live at 5258 Creekside Loop. When I retired, I wanted to find a nice, beautiful neighborhood, a nice garden home, and I came across Creekside. I was the first contract at Creekside, and I've loved it there. It's beautiful. The neighbors are wonderful. The trees, you know, everything's just a wonderful place to live. I want to inject this right now. Before I left my home tonight, I was watching the news, and there was a councilman, I believe it was a councilman that was on the TV, and he was talking about the changes being considered for trace crossings. And he ended it by saying, not his exact words, but to the fact that it would be a detriment to the residents. That's out on TV.
Well, it's how they spliced it together.
Okay.
They forgot what I said before and what I said after.
Really?
I spoke for about 10 minutes and you saw the cuts that they pulled out.
Well, it didn't sound really great, did it? I previously owned and ran a retail store for a brief period of time, and I found out that if you don't have customers, you can't make it. And thinking about this plan and the commercial area that is being talked about, I'm wondering where their base is going to be as far as their customers supporting their business. Because we're kind of out of the way, just off of 150 out of the mainstream. Where are these people going to come and support these businesses financially? That is one of my big concerns. Commercialism moving into beautiful family residents. Who will support them, is my point. And y'all have talked before about Crossbridge and how beautiful it is, and it is beautiful and seemingly doing quite well. Well, I look at the fact that they have a year-round golf and resort spot. They have things that can bring people from all around to their location, you know, the golf course especially. And so they seem to be well supported financially. And nobody's moving out, nobody, you know, okay, I gotta give up my business. But I'm thinking about the plans for here, little tiny village, and not very many people coming. I don't know how many people will be coming from the neighborhoods to support these businesses. I don't know. But I think it would take quite a few to support them because of the fact that there's so many other businesses close around. And another thing that Rossbridge has that attracts people is their, what they term community style quaintness. That seems to, their houses, that seems to be successful there. They have little front porches, you know, and it's really cute. But we're out, kind of out of the mainstream, and amenities means fewer clients to support their businesses, as I've already mentioned. So as they leave, if they don't have the customers, they're not gonna be able to keep their business afloat, and that means getting somebody else to lease their space. So, I can just, I'm a realist. I'm not a negative person, I'm positive, and I like to think positive. But thinking about these businesses being supported financially by customers coming in that have to come in from the outside. And another thing, just to inject this also, I should have said this before, and anyway, yes, there's opportunities for people to come here and visit these places, get in the hotels and all, but how many we don't have like year-round things like Rossbridge has. It's the golf course. People from all around go there to play golf, you know. And the spa and the little things that they have that are year-round that are attractive to people from all around, not just the residents. But we don't have that. We have SEC, okay, then we have this, and then we have that. I don't see anything continuous like they have that could support these businesses. And that would be very sad, you know, if the businesses did not make it, because then you'd have these beautiful homes with these empty commercial places for lease. You know, that's my man, that is a very big concern since I have been in retail sales and I know what it takes to support a business that is retail. So I just, as before, I strongly hope that y'all can take this also into consideration in the final planning. And I just hope and pray that it will work out for us as the mayor wants it to work out for, to make the residents of Trace Crossings happy. And we all want to be happy, yes, but you want us to be happy too. I think I got from you that that was a big concern from you. But I think that you're hearing from us who live there, our concerns. And I hope you will still take that into consideration. But, you know, in adding all of this, who's it for? You know, who's it really for? It just doesn't sound like it's too much for the residents. So I thank you for your time.
Hi, Shilpa Gagar, 1384 Scout Trace. I'm back again. Mostly because I don't really feel like my concerns have been addressed. The first, I know, everyone has said traffic, you're aware, but we still don't have a plan. And if there is something that would make the residents of Trace Crossings feel better about the additional development, and to be honest, this is a concern regardless of what happens tonight. There are 1,500 homes in Lake Wilburn and Blackridge. How many is it, right? 1,600 homes coming in. And traffic has not been addressed. So, and I understand.
We've already committed to traffic, so if we keep it to new information.
Well, I understand, but one of the things I pointed out before and I'd like to point out again because it sort of has been brought up, but it hasn't. Even from the neighborhoods, any commercial development will require vehicular traffic. We are not a pedestrian neighborhood. Those homes that are gonna potentially go in along the Chestnut Ridge neighborhood that could potentially have children in them, Chestnut Ridge really doesn't. My in-laws live there. And I joke that there's only a handful of families in there. It seems to have almost become this default retirement community, which I love because you always see grandparents with their grandkids. But if children were if there were families moving into that neighborhood, those children would not be able to walk to school. There is no way that they could cross that intersection. So you're talking about a completely vehicular thing. Again, my in-laws, they don't live that far from the entrance of Chestnut Trace. But there is no way that even I would feel comfortable necessarily walking across the street and walking down to that new development that may someday come in. So that is something to keep in mind when we are dealing with this and we're talking about all of this planning, and when we're talking about making changes and we're talking about putting a village center across the street from the Met. I wouldn't feel safe walking across Stadium Trace at any location. The traffic light is barely long enough where there is a traffic light for you to be able to cross. The only ones who can cross are all the runners who are running across on their workouts.
Yes, ma'am. I don't know if you were here early on, but council did commit to the fact whether this goes forward or not, that we still have to address traffic. We've got to find another way out of the Trace Crossings communities.
Sure, and I appreciate that, but that still also, again, doesn't change the fact that it is not pedestrian friendly. So this commercial development, you do need to keep in mind that people will be getting in their cars and driving across the street to the Met. People will not be, it's not safe to walk from the Met over to a restaurant. And if we have a comprehensive plan that should be ready within a year that would incorporate those elements, then what's the rush? Now, I know, I have, thank you, Mr. Shaw, for presenting a very comprehensive document that shows what the current zoning is, what could go there, and what the changes are. And I appreciate all the work that has been put in, and I do think that this is a good plan. Again, what's the rush? Something could be built there? Here's the thing. There's this thing called the Village at Brock's Gap that's across the street from Discovery United Methodist Church. All that is on that land right now is a dentist's office. We're just doing pretty well because pretty much everybody goes to those dentists. That is, I believe, the third developer that has had that property since I moved into Trace Crossings, which is relatively recent, less than 10 years ago. And the current developers have tenants that are local, well-known, popular tenants like O. Henry's Coffee and the Whole Scoop, and they haven't broken ground yet.
They will be soon.
Really, because
they've already received their zoning last summer, I believe.
right, and I have spoken, I mean, they were supposed to already be up and running before this next tournament, and they haven't broken ground. So while I appreciate what you're saying, that they have received all of that, it hasn't happened. So it's hard for me to feel like this is rushed when I've been staring at an empty lot for the last 9 years.
I've come to know the gentleman who plans on building it, and it won't be that long.
Well, I hope. But then that also adds another thing. There's already gonna be a coffee shop, there's gonna be a nail salon, there's gonna be an ice cream shop, there's gonna be a dance studio, there's going to be a small market. We hope, as residents, a couple of different restaurants that we can drive to. So what's gonna go in that next commercial land? What the previous lady was talking about in terms of actually what's going to go there. If it's going to be less of a neighborhood thing and more to support the Met, is there going to be year-round, all the time events at the Met? And we get back to the thing that you don't want me to talk about. Because I was late to carpool 2 weeks ago, because of buses coming in and out. And then I very much appreciate the commitment to addressing the school situation. Thank you. I know that it's on your radar. I know it's something that everybody knows, that the growth means that there's something that we need to do. I'd just like to point out a little historical, personal fact. When we were looking at homes in Hoover, one of the areas we looked at was Ross Bridge. At that time, it was still being marketed as there being an elementary school to be built there. Then that elementary school went away because there was what we were told, now this may not be the exact fact, but what we were told was that there was room at Deer Valley. Fast forward 3 years later, and Brock's Gap had to be created because of capacity issues. Fast forward another 6 years, and we are going to have trailers next year at that school. So this is not something that we can say, oh, we're gonna deal with later, we're gonna deal with later, we're gonna deal with later. We vastly underestimated the number of families that would move into Ross Bridge, vastly. Yes, there is capacity at Trace, and when you make that division of South Shades Crest and Brock's Gap for all the potential students to come in. But again, when you are building those houses, you are telling those people, hey, by the way, you are going to drive past Trace crossings, you are gonna go along Brock's Gap, which is a 2-lane, 35-mile-per road, out, try to turn left onto South Shades Crest, yay! And then either, if you're, and this is the only schools in the whole school system that will be this way, K through 2, they'll go to one school, and 3 to 5 to another, which, by the way, is still set up like a middle school. It's a hard sell, without knowing what the plan is down the road. I mean, I personally would say, why would I buy that home when there are other homes to be bought? And there are other homes to be bought. So, that is all. I hope that you would take those things into consideration. I personally don't feel that there is a reason to rush into this decision. It's not mine to make. I think that we have time to make sure that all these pieces are in place before we rule on this. Thank you.
Gregor, before you get started, I would like to remind those speaking that you are addressing the council and not the audience. They're already on your side. You're trying to get us on your side. May already have us, I don't know.
Hi.
Hey, Ms. McGregor.
My name's Molly McGregor, and I live at 5795 Chestnut Trace. Mr. Smith, I'm very sorry for your loss. The Stadium Trace corridor is the gateway to 1,300 homes and an additional 1,900 coming down the pipe. 3 major school systems, you guys all know that, and the construction at the Met. Despite this, many of us were unconcerned with the construction of the sports facilities and the Finley Center. And after an election full of hope and promises and over 9 months of discussion, I don't feel like we're rushing into this necessarily. I just think there's still issues on the table. We've had discussion with and presentations by Mr. Belcher. The residents of Trace Crossings also finally embraced, with reservation, a neighborhood village shopping center along Stadium Trace and an additional single-family residential community. The plans that have been presented to you seem to meet the needs of all, but we continue to be concerned with the lack of specifics and control on commercial. While many of us have come to realize, and I say that even though there's supposed to be a master development plan being presented to you. No. It is a plan to get property sold. While many of us have come to realize that to protect the success of the new sports complex, we need to accept some of the inevitable. We get it. But we felt strongly over the past year, as we do now, that restrictions reflecting neighborhood commercial, and I say neighborhood commercial, but really it's become a neighborhood commercial village center community corridor. I mean, it's the Met is dictating that to us, not just residents anymore. We've always known that the Met was there. We felt then, as we do now, that the commercial support systems of hotels and restaurants for a facility, such as the sports complex, belong on Highway 150. Those are not designed to serve the neighborhood, but rather visitors. But we understand what the city is trying to do. That doesn't mean it can't be better than proposed. Yet U.S. Steel has its own needs to sell the property. I spoke with Billy today, ran into him at lunch. Billy, are you going to develop this property? No. Oh, I might. No. Which means it's going to be sold to someone else who will develop the property. So the motivation here on the part of U.S. Steel is to get its own PC, as little restrictions as possible, so that they can sell it. Mark my words on that, guys. This is not about a master development plan. U.S. Steel has presented to you an amendment to the Trace Crossings PUD that is only a conceptual plan. In Zone 10, not an actual plan. And likely a plan that makes it seem like a village center concept, and they have absolutely no plan in Zone 6, except some restrictions that we agreed upon. We have met repeatedly among ourselves with Mr. Belcher, hired a consultant, shared information with you all, have numerous back and forth conversations and emails. All of this has been done despite us wanting to go on with our lives. And you all know that I have not broken stride beside what went down in my family. This is our city, not just our neighborhood, and this is your city, not just one neighborhood. Don't let one landowner who is trying to get ahead of your efforts at comprehensive planning control how our city works, how our neighborhoods look. When we would talk with Jonathan, he'd go back. I had no idea they were meeting with the city. The city was involved in this master plan. He would go back to U.S. Steel. No, Billy won't accept that. If the city was involved in this, why haven't we been contacted by the city for, this is what we're planning on doing, this is what our master plan would look like? Yes, they've received our input through emails and phone conversations and stuff and passed on the street, but I have not heard anything from the mayor.
I hope you understand that the council only got involved on.
I'm sure, because it's a plan to enhance the Met.
Well, other than Mr. Shaw's involvement, I know I was not invited to participate in any of the conversations. I don't know about everybody else.
You have the right to determine our land uses, our village centers, the look and function of our neighborhood commercial, and even our corridor commercial. Our village centers, this plan has gone through several iterations. Yes, it has. And some of them I have not seen a final copy of the restrictions. We met on Saturday afternoon at 1 o'clock and went over a document that came through the email, but we never saw a final document. We're just giving our input and trying to figure out whether or not we should hold our ground.
It's on the city website. If you'd like to check it out.
Was it posted around 4 o'clock this afternoon?
It was put on Friday.
It was put on Friday? We were still talking, we're talking about the Amendment 11 or the restrictions sheet that we don't have a copy of.
It's my understanding all of the above. Is that not right?
Not when we were still negotiating on Saturday afternoon.
No, that was after that we weren't involved.
Okay. You have the right to plan. And just like Mac Martin, our new city planner, has said, what we're doing, you can do bits and pieces and stuff. But where are the principles that have been set down and would be set down in a comprehensive plan? Are we just using textbook stuff that comes out of land use planning? Last February, I met at the Met and I urged you guys to purchase the property. I know that sounds really expensive, because you were landlocked on the sports complex, or at least set the restrictions for development on it. Set the restrictions for development on it before we went through this mess. And once a developer came in, requires site plans. When US Steel sells this, make sure you see what they're going to slap up there. Because remind you, TCRB is Billy Silver. He might have advisory boards, they have no vote. And yes, he might be following PUD restrictions, but we're on the 11th amendment of PUD restrictions, or PUD whatever, and there'll be 12 and 13, because you're not done yet. Make sure you see renderings, elevations, signage, etc., that meet those restrictions. Consider how important it is to regulate the look of a commercial zone when it is a neighborhood commercial or even a corridor commercial. The mayor and you may have been told by SFM that a hotel in support of commercial facilities will assure, or at least help with, the success of the Finley Center and Sports Complex. I would bet they assured the need for this is a security blanket for their own contract, their own management ability to stay with it. Mayor, you may have provided information to others outside. I came across an email that was sent to me by Trace Crossing's resident that indicated to me that talking points were being distributed to the sports folks, who said, we've got to have this, it's going to be the success of the sports complex. Yet every one of those Hoover sports folks will drive home and go to their own homes. They don't live in Trace Crossings. And if you approve a hotel anywhere, how many more will follow? It ain't done yet. Think of the places you stay with your families. There are usually a variety for visitors to choose from. Those are usually at the intersections of interstate highways. I also urge you to get U.S. Steel to separate out parcels 10 and 6 tonight. If you can vote on them separately, do it. Do not be held hostage by U.S. Steel. The balance of this proposal is good for Hoover and the success of the Finley Center and Sports Complex and the schools. You have already received information from us on designs for neighborhood commercial centers put in place in hundreds of municipalities, all of whom are dealing with the same stuff. And they found solutions. They're struggling too. Right now, it looks like we are attempting to combine the neighborhood commercial with the community commercial. As I said 2 weeks ago, the gauntlet's laid down, gentlemen. The first major decision is required for one of the finest neighborhood and school districts in the city. We might not be able to wait on the new comprehensive plan. And I'm not sure how big your comprehensive plan is going to be, but 10 months is really short. Well, it depends on how comprehensive you're planning on being. I think it took us two years with community input, and it was just going to be a staff-directed process without input from the community. We've already witnessed tonight the fact that we have a comprehensive plan for a small parcel of Trace Crossings, yet our input has been negotiated through the builder, through the owner, not through the city. So take the bull by the horns and expect exceptionalism. Require more specifics that will protect the residents and school children while enhancing the development of the Met. Let us out of the negotiating ring. We're really tired. We don't have the background. We don't have the expertise that you have with yours. We don't want your job. Insist on the best for Hoover, make this plan better. You have the right. You have the right. If you can restrict gas stations, you can restrict hotels on parcel 6. Postpone this decision and find a solution. Above all, you should control what happens in the city, not U.S. Steel. There is time. What's the hurry? U.S. Steel will still be here. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely. You will not hear the words master plan out of my mouth. No traffic. I'm going to talk to you about, my name is Robin Schultz. I'm at 348 Albemarle Drive. I'd like to talk to you, dovetail on what Mr. Murphy and Dr. Middlebrook said a little bit earlier, and that is to steal Mr. McClinton's line. These homes are not being built because we have one of the finest steak and shakes in the state of Alabama. These homes are being built because we have one of the finest school systems in the state of Alabama. And in order to maintain the finest school systems in the state of Alabama, if these homes are approved, then we're going to expect a lot from this council and from this mayor. We're going to expect the correct funding for our school. When Dr. Murphy said that when this is built out, Hoover High School will be at 110%. It's already the largest high school in population in the state of Alabama. We're going to expect a lot more than $5 million a year from the city. We're going to expect to maintain this particular school system that we have, because if we lose the school system, we're going to lose the homes. When we lose the homes, what else is left? So as you plan on this, back in 1994, it's expected that $3,500 was what was needed as a front door fee. Mr. Belcher has promised $3,000 for some homes. That $3,500 translates to $5,795 in today's dollars. rounded off to $6,000, twice of what Mr. Belcher has promised. So we're looking at that, and we're also looking at the future. I hope that as you vote tonight, if you're voting tonight, that you will take into consideration not only today, but also 10 years from now, and fund the schools properly and adequately at that time. Thank you very much.
Kai Gregory, 3917 Butler Springs Way. I'm a resident of Hoover for my entire life. I was born here, and to do what you said and simply address you, this city is the city that I've lived in my whole life. Like I said, it's the city that I chose. 2 years I didn't live here. Me and my wife, after we got married, we moved back here because we wanted to raise our family here. I want my children to raise their family here, like I am. I pulled some stats before I came here today. In 1970, there were 688 people in the city of Hoover. I was born a year later. In 1980, there was 18,996. And in 1990, there was 39,000. If not for the master plan or the forethought of the city council then, would we be where we are today? It's 2017. It's called progress. What the plan in front of you is. I grew up on Panorama Terrace, Talheim Drive, Charing Cross Lane, and we moved to Russet Woods. Then we've moved to Ross Bridge. I plan on moving to Black Ridge when it is built. So the complaints of some about the traffic, I apologize, but I'm good. I know that I'll have to deal with that. I still plan to move there. I'm a business owner. My business is located here in Hoover. I could have it a lot of other places where it may be cheaper. I chose to have it here so my tax dollars, so my licensing fees, so everything else would go to the city that I love. And that is the city of Hoover. I love everything about it. Now granted, I'm more this side. I understand that you guys represent everyone, not just Ross Bridge, not just Trace Crossings, not just anywhere else. I would ask you to please consider the facts of this proposal and what it means for the city of Hoover and what it means 10, 15, 25 years down the road. Are we going to continue the growth of the leaders of this great city? In 1986, when we opened the Galleria, skipped school and went to the opening. I can say it now, I'm not going to get in trouble. I worked at Just for Feet when it was here on Galleria Drive. It was one of my first, official jobs out of high school. I went to college at UAB and lived in Hoover while I was there. There's nothing about this proposal, in my opinion, that's bad for the city of Hoover. It's 2017. It's progress. If we don't move forward, we stand still or we're left behind. My children, when we go to other cities, they talk about how great it is to live in the city of Hoover. Not just because of sports, because of the city of Hoover. I remember when 150, I sent all of you an email. I'm not going to rehash the whole thing. I'm not going to take up near that much time. But I remember running down 459 before it was 459 when it was still dirt. I was born at Brookwood Hospital, but we lived in Panorama Terrace, so I consider the fact that I was born in Hoover. I plan on dying in Hoover. Again, I'm 45. Hopefully I'll see 45 more years. And I just really want to implore you guys, because thank you for what you do. I know sitting up here listening to all these people talk has got to stink. I totally understand that. But I implore you, if you love this city as much as I do, please consider all the facts. Thank you however you vote. Whether you vote my opinion or not, thank you very much, and thank you for representing this great city.
Well, this is your third bite at the apple. We may have to put a limit on how many times somebody
different item on the agenda.
That's why you need sacred spots for what I suppose.
Arnold Center, 613 Riverhaven Place. I was on the internet as usual earlier today, and I came across a very interesting little thing under rotten e-cards, posted by a friend of mine, noted author T.K. Thorne, who has produced some very wonderful books. And it says, as long as everything is exactly the way I want it, I'm totally flexible. Now, that's an introduction to something that I'm recalling from the past. When SFM's contract came before the council, and Council President Smith, you made the motion to approve the contract, and then Admiral Natter, who had not been at the work session, asked some questions, and one of the questions related to the fact that the protected area for Hoover for another SFM involvement in the contract was 25 miles, whereas originally, in the original draft, it had been 100 miles. And it was sort of a stalemate. And at that point, you withdrew your motion to approve the contract. So I implore you, as you discuss after hearing from us what you want to do, if there are things that you feel are important to include in the amendment or in the resolutions, etc., please feel free to do it. 100 miles was a lot better than 25 miles. Thank you.
Mr. Singer, you've got to start working on the book. Sorry? You need to start working on the book of your autobiography or something. You have some very wonderful sayings, you really do.
Internet's a wonderful thing, and it's great to be 80 years old and still enjoying coming out and saying my piece.
I'm wonderful. How are you? My name is Al Keith, 5631 Chestnut Trace, and I live on the ridge where everything is better. Wouldn't you all agree? So now, you did say to address the council, and I think that it's very fitting that I address the council based on the fact that the proposed changes that I've heard, based on the master plan. This master plan, I've heard tons of statistics, I've heard semantics, and what I need you to consider is that at some point, with the proposed changes, there are going to be some things that are going to be required of you as the council and required of the city. One of the things, there should be a contingency plan for safety. As you bring in more homes, more businesses, more people, you're going to have to ramp up to make sure that our residents and our citizens are safe. Just consider that. We need to consider our health. And I have to go back to the traffic once again. When we talk about traffic, it's not just the idea of one way in, one way out. You have to consider that at some point you're going to have traffic that's just idling and it's just sitting there. And as a respiratory therapist, I do understand that there have been many studies done of the increase of asthma and COPD around high traffic areas. And because we know that this is the case, we need to be very concerned about two things, our safety and our health. And once again, this is going to come back to you. So as you vote, just consider and make sure you have a contingency plan to ramp up on those things that are going to be part of public safety and public health.
You're going to have a new fire station very close in just a few years. They're all advanced life support. And they're going to be able to take care of you wonderfully. Class 1 fire department.
That sounds great. That sounds great. But in the real world, once again, we need to be ready and you need to be able to do those things that are proposed. Sounds good, and it looks good on paper,
But once again, we're talking about real world things. Semantics and statistics are great, but when you need to put them in action, you need to be ready to go. So I'm just saying, at some point, this is gonna come back to you. And I just hope, and once again, I'm gonna use that word, I implore you to take all of these things into consideration and have contingency plans for the growth that's supposed to happen as part of these changes. Thank you.
I'm Charles Bennick. I live at 5836 Chestnut Trace. I'm at the far end of from the gate. I'm looking at the picture behind you, and I see a hotel with an attraction attached right to it. And I'm wondering why there isn't any thought given to putting the hotel closer to the Finley Center, attached to the Finley Center, so that when people come and have an activity at the Finley Center, they don't have to walk a quarter mile in the rain up the hill to get to the activity center. Use this as your example. I don't have anything else to say.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Bill Thomason. I live at 5327 Creekside Place, 35244. I came here to speak about one thing. I sat here and listened to this, and I changed my mind. I'm an old country boy. I'm used to have a saying, proper planning prevents poor performance.
No, it's a little different than that.
Sir?
It's a little different than that, but it's, yours is the G-rated version.
I was not a citizen of Hoover until 10 years ago, but I know a little, not exactly about this issue. But let's speak directly to Trace Crossings. US Steel started a little division down here, and all of a sudden, somebody went to put a high school down here. Land was cheap, Hoover made, and US Steel made a profit. And then we wanted another school, and land was cheap, and US Steel made a profit. Then we wanted the Met, again, on and on and on. But nobody ever addressed the infrastructure. Nobody looked to the future. Now, what I'm asking y'all to do is look to the future. I've had a small amount of traffic design experience. I'd be glad to share with you anytime you'd like to call me. I've studied some maps. There are some things that can be done. Gentlemen, these things need to be done. Not after this stuff, not after this change. It needs to be done before any more traffic is added to the situation. Thank you.
Sir, if you'd like to, you can talk to Mr. Rod Long. He'd probably be happy to have a conversation, or coffee or something. Yes, sir.
I really could have used that pizza. You wanted to order 4 hours ago.
Nobody else was in, huh?
I was all in. Good evening. My name is John Parker, 1699 Oak Park Lane. Come here as a resident. I come here as park president for the Softball Association. City of Hoover, the entire city of Hoover, is building a first-class sports complex and facility. I believe the intention is for it to last and operate year-round. Pull out baseball, softball, football, lacrosse, soccer, tennis, business expos, you can go on and on. Wrestling, basketball. The number of hotels we have on 150 and the traffic we have on 150 right now, bringing the complex and all the sports to the Finley Center. Knowing the numbers I know from a few of the sports, I don't think we have enough hotels on 150 to accommodate all these families. So they're gonna have to go someplace else. You're building a first-class facility, and you have to bring in first-class amenities. A hotel's gonna have to be one of them. As a father with 3 kids who play and travel sports, I travel all over the Southeast. and I do pay to be as close as possible to that sporting event. If they have hotels on site, I stay on site. If it's more money, I'll pay them more money because we all work as parents who have kids who play sports. I wake up at 7 to go to work, maybe 7:15. On Saturday morning, I'm up at 5:30. Get my kid to a field at 6:30, 6:45 to play a sport. 150 is pretty packed now. Where I live, I have access to the 3 different Publixes, one in Helena, one in McCullough, and one in Hoover. Sometimes, because of the traffic, depending on the year, I'll go someplace else. I don't want to deal with the traffic. The hotel will eliminate the additional traffic on 150 because they'll just go across the street. This weekend, we'll have about 300 teams playing softball. City of Hoover was going to bring in quite a few of them, but we don't have a facility right now to bring them, so we had to send them to North Alabama. Change is good, change is scary, change is inevitable. Change is a way of life. Life is always changing. You don't grow, you'll never change. We have to change. We have to make adjustments to our plan. Ross Bridge has a golf course, and they have a hotel. Very successful. The Finley Center is a sports complex, and it needs a hotel. We also have a bond payment to pay. We need to pay the bond payment. We need the folks, we need the sporting events, we need the hotel, we need the restaurants, we need the money. We don't have the money, we don't make the bond. Everything else will go away. We don't want to have to deal with a bankruptcy or a problem paying our bond back.
From Mr. House as to which vote do the restrictions,
Subject to any motion to approve. First is that all 515 units, subject to the amendment, subject to the $3,000 front door fee, same as at Black Ridge. The peg pass stamped asphalt across Stadium Trace shall be included as part of the project, and the convenience stores are prohibited.
Mr. President,
gas stations were already.
Yes.
what was the second one, Mr. House?
The pedestrian path across, sorry, pedestrian way across Stadium Trace, which would be stamped asphalt there at the pedestrian crossing from Village Center over to Village Center.
That's only on the,
Yes, I think so. All these are amendments to the text, whereas the ordinances are individual ordinances regarding specific zoning actions.
all right, Mr. President, I would move to adopt ordinance 17-2335.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Ray?
Nay.
Mr. Lyda?
Aye.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Posey?
Nay.
Mr. Shaw?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye. That is item number 3. Next, we have item number 4, ordinance number 17-2336.
Yes, Mr. President, I would move to adopt ordinance 17-2336.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Green?
Nay.
Mr. Lyda?
Aye.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Posey?
Nay.
Mr. Shaw?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye. We have item number 5, which is ordinance 17-2337.
Yes, Mr. President, I would move to adopt ordinance 17-2337. President, I would move to approve the Trace Crossings 11th Amendment, subject to the restrictions as listed by Mr. House's recommended changes to the Trace Crossings 11th Amendment, stamped as received by the city June 2nd, 2017 document. And additionally, 5 15 units subject to the $3,000 front door fee.
I think you're about one vote too early. This is strictly in the conditional use. Well, I don't know.
Oh, is that separate?
This is a separate motion.
Okay, that was not highlighted, I didn't see, I'm sorry.
So, motion on the conditional use.
Yes, Mr. President, I move to approve the conditional use.
Second.
Have a motion, second. This does not require a roll call. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Passes. Lastly, the motion to approve Trace Crossings 11th Amendment. As it currently stands with previous votes and previous documents. This is where I believe you want to include Mr. House's comments.
All right. Mr. President, I move to approve Trace Crossings 11th Amendment, subject to the restrictions as outlined in the recommended changes to the Trace Crossings 11th Amendment, stamped as received by the city June 2nd, 2017 document. In addition, the 515 units will be subject to the $3,000 front door fee. Convenience stores prohibited, and the pedestrian way across Stadium Trace of stamped asphalt will be required.
Second.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
beforehand, I just want to make sure that that's a transfer, it states on the document that it's a transfer, not addition of units.
I'm sorry?
Thank you.
Mr. President, as well, it was a dollar amount that was established, average dollar amount that was established for front door fees a year ago. So, a lot, the total amount was averaged about $400,000 or so initially for front door fees that accumulate every year, was average. The reason why I bring that up is the $3,000 front door fee for every unit. We established that any dollar above that will go to the schools. Right now, we have a $5 million amount annually the schools receive. So we need to kind of,
That's gonna be a budget issue.
yeah, but I want to make sure we,
I don't think we can take care of that at this time. This is a budget issue. We voted for this current year's budget, and that was to be something to make sure that we include in our next budget.
as a note.
You can put it in for legislative reference, but I don't know that it can be.
We've already committed that these front door fees go to the schools.
Right,
That question you're.
Yeah, but the current front door fees with the dollar amount that the city is slated to give the schools is $5 million.
What, the $5 million doesn't have anything to do with the front door fees.
I think it's wanting to verify. the
Yeah.
cap.
Yeah, so how are we looking at these front doors? Is that gonna be extra? So we're talking about $5 million
Plus.
plus whatever the front door fees are.
That's correct.
Any other questions? Let's see, we have a motion? We have a motion and a second. All right, any other questions from the council? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Moving on to item 18, we have first reading, ordinance 17-338, Mr. Corley.
Ordinance number 17-2338 approves an annexation of a 7-acre parcel of Hamilton property and a 24-acre parcel of Carmichael property currently surrounded by to become part of the Blank Ridge PUD.
All right, the second reading and consideration for adoption will be Monday, June 19th. Item 19, first reading 17-2339.
This ordinance approves the annexation of Phase 1 of plumbing parcels 1 and 2, approximately 211 acres, currently located adjacent to and to become part of the Trace Crossing PUD.
All right, we have a request from staff that we suspend the rules for immediate consideration. I think this has to do with some roadway, projects that we're trying to get underway. Is that correct, Mr. Rice?
Let Mr. Westhoven speak.
Yes, sir, Mr. Smith, we would appreciate it if y'all would consider that.
Okay, just so the members understand, the motion to suspend the rules must be unanimous, otherwise this will be only a first reading. So, we could have a motion to suspend the rules.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
Mr. Leggett?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have an aye. So, this is a first reading, and I guess, the second reading will be consideration for adoption on Monday, June 19th. Item number 20 is first reading of ordinance 17-2340.
This ordinance approves the annexation of Phase 2 of plumbing parcels 1 and 2, approximately 211 acres, currently located adjacent to and to become a part of the Trace Crossing PUD.
All right, second reading and consideration for adoption on Monday, June 19th. Mr. Leiter, payment of the bills.
Smith, we've reviewed the bills and I recommend they be paid in full.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nays. The ayes have it. Comments and questions from the council?
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, since the motion to suspend rules didn't pass, do we need to consider calling a special session?
It could occur, it'll have to be advertised in the Madam Clerk, 24-hour requirement.
President, we can wait until the next.
Next regular meeting. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Mayor, I came to understand why you on vacation, that you're ready to move with the Stadium Advisory Committee. You've got your selected, so why don't we anticipate having that as an action item at our next meeting? And then I'll really take part in the retirement their choice. They got a meeting coming up. Any other questions, comments? I understand Made South was a great success. Everybody that got to go had a picture made with the boys and them.
Was, Mr. Smith, we received information data of about 1,500 participants. The event organizer was thrilled and will be returning next year.
Excellent, that's great. Anything from the audience tonight? Yes, sir.
Pete Mosley, 3415, Heather Lane, Hoover, 35216. I sort of kind of felt like I should have brought a sleeping bag. But tonight, y'all heard a lot of things, but I bring you something. I moved to Hoover about 3 years ago and love it up here. Those was across town. And tonight, I know y'all hear a lot of things, and most of them probably are negative. But I want to thank y'all on behalf of myself and the community of Lockridge subdivision. Our streets have just been repaved. Folks, we're tickled to death with what the city, the council, the mayor, the public works department, Wiregrass Construction Company did for our neighborhood. It is excellent, it was timely, it was needed, but I know the mayor, the council, the engineering department, you hear a lot of negative things, but I want you to know from our neighborhood, thank you very much for what you've done.
Sir, I'll give you $5. other comments from the public?
Did you buy dinner?
I offered that at 7:30. That got shot down. Nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor, say aye.